a Nile back live. I ain't fooling with y'all.
Hey, man.
Bones. I knew he was gonna do that.
That joker sound like dude a while ago when he's how you hit it? No sellout.
No
What
sellout.
I
Hit a
say?
voice. He hit a voice
Oh,
2 days ago.
when he first
I
come
told
on.
Nikki, hey Bones, I told Nikki about that. I had to tell her that you I heard your knee slap. You was knee slapping.
Oh, there was 3 of us on the call. I was like,
I don't even remember. Look, it caught me off guard. I don't even remember what I said.
What on the song?
No, that's not me. That's
On the
not me.
song, no sell out.
Yeah.
That's me doing the intro.
Man, you was
Speaking
spitting
on
it. All I can say. Listen,
No, that song is fire.
all I can say, whoever was on this song was spitting it.
That's
And you could, and that's how I knew it was your voice, because you pronounced every damn word.
it ain't me, yo. It's not me. It's not me.
Oh no,
Bones,
the cat's out the
Bones,
bag.
I need a song.
Emma,
Yeah.
she got the
I need a
meters.
song because she swear up and down as me on the track. It's not me. I wish I could take credit for that. That's not me. I ain't even.
That's not you. Well, whoever it is, they be spitting. He sound like you. Even though he might not look like you, he sound like you.
Bones, shout out the
But he was spitting.
intro song that we have right now.
Yeah.
If you can.
Man,
But yeah, it ain't me in my hall. I ain't got no rap name yet.
Yeah.
You ain't gotta have a rap name. You can spit bars without having a
I
rap
can use
name.
my real name.
That too.
DW.
But I was sitting here listening to him. I was like, oh shit. Get it? Oh.
Hey, we live. See, you got a swear jar. You done hit the swear jar. Just because you dialing in don't mean you can fuck on the air.
You know me. Listen, you know my mouth. Y'all know my mouth.
Like
Why we having this discussion about a swear jar? I can't clean it.
We donate. We donate the swear jar to the community. It's called unchallenged verbal speaking. Yeah, that's what it's called.
Right.
Yeah, but the intro song is the artist name is Kosher and the name of the song is Chess Moves.
Man, get that brother a shout out for me. That dude was spitting.
Bye.
I bet you that mic needed a whole tower after he finished.
Right. That's from out of Gabrielle's playlist. I can't take no credit from that. I just cleaned it up, so play it in the rising. But yeah.
Yes. I listen to all kinds of stuff.
Ain't you from California? Some Mark Buster just stepped on my sneaker.
You know what? Oh, I'm so glad you did that. Listen, I'm gonna tell you something. I always wondered if that was intentional, and here's why.
What, stepping on sneakers?
The people that I grew up with
or the hard
did
R?
not talk like that.
Oh,
That
so
is
no
a
hard
now
R's?
talk. Yeah, that was not. You know, okay, if people who did talk like that, they got clowned, they got joked on, they got talked about. Because everybody didn't talk like that. Even the people who were from there, born there, grandmas and granddaddies, like people did not talk like that. I said, "But you sound retarded."
Swear jar.
Oh, are we long? Oh shit!
If we live, if we were live, I would have hung the phone up.
No, we live.
Oh
no,
yeah.
Bones done counted us in. I don't know where you was at.
No, I'm just saying. People did not. That I really feel like that was an introduced, intentional. This is the identity of how we want to introduce sound here, and I'm saying this because people were not again. I remember thinking like, dang, why everybody from Louisiana? Most of everybody was from Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma. I mean, I remember listening to adults like, "Oh, you from Arkansas? Are you from so and so and so and so?" And they're like, "Yeah, I'm from." Is your cousin so and so? Yeah, that's my grandma. Or are you from Louisiana? You from it? Like families were meeting back up, not knowing.
Yes.
Huh?
What's that? Oh, it's feedback. I was like, what's going on?
Okay, we live. Bye, y'all.
Look, she had to double check. We try to tell you. You need that $5. I swear. Hard R. Gabrielle, you cut out too?
No, I got quiet. I wasn't sure what I was hearing.
I just got quiet.
Oh, you heard yourself. You got nervous.
I heard my voice.
Is that how I sound?
That's me.
Over there when I'm standing right here.
But Michael Brown, Harris Cheek, he said something that a lot of people probably not aware of.
I see it.
Apollo Theater. No, you do. You have an Apollo Theater in West Virginia. Matter of fact, it's Martinsburg, West Virginia, and it's been open since 1912.
Wow.
The Apollo Civic Theater, yes, that is in West Virginia.
I did not know that. Thank you. Michael
So
Brown, Harris Cheek.
made at the Apollo. Which one are they talking about?
Right.
Talk about age and timelines and what became voiced.
Oh, me too.
You sure?
Yeah. Listen, I'm still finding people in California I didn't even know existed. Born around the same time I was. I was like, oh, I could have had fun with them when I was a child.
Mike said West Virginia got Apollo too.
You ain't listening.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. It's in Martinsburg, West Virginia.
Okay, Apollo. That's
Yeah.
what it was.
Yeah, it's been there since what? 1912, 1913. Yeah. It was listed in 1979 as a historical place.
What about the one on 125th though? How long that's been there?
1979, another summer.
Opened at the same time. They both opened at the same time. 1913.
Whoa.
Really?
Yeah.
1913.
Yeah, we didn't even know nothing about the one.
You cheating, Adam?
So when they telling you their careers were made at the Apollo again,
which one?
Right.
Right. Which
The
one?
South or the North?
Dang, for real.
That's awesome, Mike. Man, that was awesome.
You know, reading that article last night where it talked about the salt, that really sat with me and made me think about how many other things were done that way and how many other things are done that way now.
Speak on it.
Well, because the North wouldn't share. The North had salt and the North wouldn't share the salt with the South. So people who were part of the Confederate Army switched and went from the Confederate Army into the Union Army in order to be able to receive the salt. And how I was reading to you last night how
mineral salt.
Huh?
You mean mineral salt?
Yeah. Because remember, they used to use salt to cure. The way we use salt now is not the way salt was used then.
So it was before pre-refrigeration. Salt was how you preserve meats and stuff.
Correct.
Right. Longevity.
Correct.
But some information, since we said Apollo, Michael Brown Harris Cheek is responsible for this one real quick, y'all. We're talking about the one in New York. Y'all better strap down for this. The theater, which has a capacity of 1,506, opened in 1914 as Hertig and Simmons' new burlesque theater and was designed by George Kessler in the neoclassic style. It became the Apollo in 1934 when it was open to Black patrons. Previously, it had been a whites-only venue. Your original one designed by us is West Virginia.
One in West Virginia. The one in Virginia is the original Apollo. So for all you cats out there that don't know, Now we got the scoop. Thank you,
Y'all
Mike
better
Brown.
get off 1/2.
Say it again, Doodoo.
What?
Come on, son.
Come on, son. I mute the mic. Boy,
I can hear Dude now saying,
picking up rocks.
where are your people from? So the one in Virginia was established in 1913. The one in New York was really established in 1934.
There you go.
Yep.
1933 or 34?
34.
So which means they came up with the plan in 33.
They probably came up with
All right. Still keep them seats strapped down. The Apollo Theater in Martinsburg, West Virginia was designed by architect Ronald Greer with local architect Chapman and built in 1913 by theater owner H.P. Thorne. As constructed, it had a seating capacity of 1,000 and was used for movies, vaudeville, and concerts. Upper floors provided meeting spaces for large groups. The Apollo Theater is operated as a community-supported facility. It was listed on the National Registry of Historical Places in 1979. It is included in the downtown Martinsburg Historical District. Neither one of them have anything to do with us.
Neither one. That Apollo do sound like a space program. Think about this.
That boy had bad.
Space program. They might have been spacing us out. Because today they say, give me 6 feet. I can't even date nobody now.
Arms distance. Put your arms out.
Yeah, I got to come up 6
Put
feet.
your arms out.
Hey, when we going to go on that third date? Because technically we ain't been but 6 feet apart all this time. I thought you were 6 feet.
All right, I got where we was back up on screen and everything now. And again, sorry for the blackout because I have no idea what happened. Everything literally blacked out. And thanks again, Michael Brown Harris Cheek, because yeah, I think we're gonna end up breaking that down and coming back one day with that.
Yeah,
yeah, Michael, that was a gem right there. That was something that I bet you a bunch of us didn't know. We go around here hollering, that's our shit, that's our shit. That ain't your shit.
It's just all of a sudden that somebody gave us.
Sorry about that.
Fine Island. Getting all y'all riled up this rising.
We said you trying to get even, huh?
Y'all catching up with me.
For all the people out there that heard that, I do apologize. Log on to.
You talking about the bird strap? It's all right, it's nature.
They wanted to get in on the conversation too.
You trying to get them to pay that $5, I know.
You know, left off Gabrielle before it blanked out.
All right, Mike Romini, read. Can y'all hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, I just had an unstable little thing come across my screen. Okay. Adding to the national perspective, I don't know if I read this. Hope I didn't. Adding to the national perspective of Indians was a bi-weekly magazine started by John Collier while promoting the Indian New Deal in the 1930s. Titled Indians at Work, the magazine presented favorable articles of Indians. The publication reflected Collier's own noble savage. Okay. The publication reflected Collier's own noble savage notions of American Indians. Is that okay? He portrayed Indians as wronged through actions of whites, such as having been robbed of their religions, traditions, and land through past government assimilation policies. Opponents of Collier countered that the social reform and experimentation was interrupting the progress of Indians in joining white society. Collier and the Indian New Deal, they claimed, were sending Indian peoples back to their primitive life ways.
Now, you know what's interesting in this thing? Where you read that Collier and his noble savage notions.
Yeah, that was weird wording to put together.
Mm-hmm.
And then to say, okay, perhaps the biggest aspect of Indian issues was that the debate was still largely between white reformers and white proponents of assimilation.
Not one Indian available for the conversation. Ain't that something?
Right. Even John Collier operated.
So ain't that convenient?
Wait, isn't that like I'm right here? Y'all talking about me? I'm right here. I'm right here.
But both sides keep talking about you.
Parents talking about kicking you out, but you sitting at the table with them.
Right. Wait, can y'all hear me?
Nope.
Yep.
Read.
Okay. Perhaps the biggest aspect of Indian issues was that the debate was still largely between white reformers and white proponents of assimilation. Even John Collier operated largely in a paternalistic, acting as a parent to a child manner. Speaking for the Indian about what was best, in his opinion, for the Indian. Nonetheless, Collier was promoting a multicultural viewpoint that Indian cultures and traditions should be respected and preserved through the lives of Indians. Though the lives of Indians were changing under the Indian New Deal, their public image, based on earlier stereotypes, was changing far less. Some members of Congress still held to the view that multiculturalism was wrong for the United States. They believed assimilation, the key goal of the 1887 General Allotment Act, should continue to drive federal policy. They were not in favor of spending money to strengthen tribal authority or encourage the perpetuation of Indian arts, crafts, languages, religion, and culture. As a result, provisions of the IRA were never well funded.
This is very interesting, but then it also makes sense on a lot of things that you can see today. Even when it says Collier operated largely in a paternalistic manner, speaking for Indians about what was best for the Indian in his opinion.
Right.
So it still wasn't about the Indians. It's always been about someone else trying to tell you how to live, what to be, when you look at it. It was never really about helping.
Excuse me. Several other factors on the national level contributed to the shifts in federal Indian policy during the New Deal. Of significant importance among these events was the rise of an educated, able group of American Indian leaders, sometimes called Red Progressives. Between 1900s and the mid-1920s, these people pressed for reform of the Office of Indian Affairs, changes in Indian education, greater exercise of trust responsibility, and the extension of citizenship to all American Indians.
Oh, how our brother James said, we get into where the rubber meets the road. Who Indians to be U.S. citizens again, Miss Gabrielle? What that say?
Red Progressives, who were a group of
Indians
American Indian leaders,
and they were educated. Most likely, a lot of these Indian children that they kidnapped and put into these schools.
Dr. Carlos Montezuma.
One more time for the nosebleeds.
Dr. Carlos Montezuma.
Did you say Dr. Montezuma?
Yep.
First churches in the Americas, schools for Indians.
Okay. Dr. Carlos Montezuma, a Yavapai? I can't say, I didn't say that right. So, bones. Yavapai. Yavipe. Thank you. Yavipa, physician and editor of Wasaha, was a sharp critic of the Office of Indian Affairs and called for its abolition. A traveling photographer had adopted Montezuma at a young age and moved him from the Southwest to Chicago. What? That's all the little insert they're going to put to that?
Before you go further, I want to do something real quick because I think it's very important. The Society of American Indians, these are your Red Progressives, 1911 to 1923, was the first national American Indian rights organization run by and for American Indians. The society pioneered 20th century pan-Indianism. The society pioneered 20th century pan-Indianism.
Amen.
Way before there was Pan-Africanism, they created a pan-Indianism.
Didn't we discuss the pan-Indian movement at one point?
Oh, yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Man, that was last spring.
Oh, go ahead, Gabrielle.
So I don't want us to get stuck here, but help me understand this sentence because it's just really interesting that it would just drop off, put this little bit in, drop off, and then move on like it's not nothing. A traveling photographer had adopted Montezuma at a young age and moved him from the Southwest to Chicago.
Remember, we stated that already. But they were saying a lot of these children got adopted. They were sent to these schools to learn particular ways to come back to the Indians and convince them to assimilate.
Right. This is a traveling photographer. Just happened to, run across Montezuma.
We know better than that.
Right. There he attended college and graduated from the Chicago Medical College of Northwestern University. Others, like Dr. Henry Rowe Cloud, worked from within the Office of Indian Affairs to try to improve its delivery of services to Native peoples. Cloud had attended government reservation schools as a youth. Through his own ambition in 1910, he became the first American Indian to graduate from Yale University. He later received a doctorate in divinity from Emporia College in Kansas in 1932. what that's like, is that like a pastor when it says a doctorate in divinity?
You know it.
Okay.
And real quick, Pan-Indianism is a philosophy and political approach promoting unity and to some extent cultural, what's that?
Can you hear me?
Loud and
If
clear.
I knew where we was at, I could say it, but I don't know where we at.
Wait, what happened?
No, it's how it's pronounced. I was like, oh no, can't say that wrong. Not on L. HOMOGENIZATION.
Wait,
Nope.
say it again.
Yeah, you just read it, man.
I
You're too
was gonna
fast.
say it. HOMOGENIZATION. And I'm not gonna say it.
Homogenization. Homogenization.
Okay, I was about to write it down.
Homogenize.
I end up putting the extra letter in. I'm like, nope, can't say that now. Among different Native Americans, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis groups in the Americas, regardless of tribe distinction and cultural differences. The approach to politically organizing is primarily associated with the Native Americans organizing for social justice and cultural revitalization in the continental United States, but has spread to some other indigenous communities as well. Inuit and Métis people, we remember the Métis.
Hey, now.
It's part of the broader Pan-Aboriginal community. Let me repeat this. The Inuit and Métis people may consider themselves part of the broader Pan-Aboriginal community of some variation thereof. Some academics have also used the term Pan-Amerindianism to distinguish from other people known as Indians. Some Pan-Indian organizations seek to pool the resources of indigenous groups in order to protect the interests of native peoples across the world. Again,
shout out Copper India.
Indian organizations seek to pool the resources of indigenous groups in order to protect the interests of native peoples across the world. Pan-Indianism. Way before there was a Pan-Africanism. So where do you think they got that from? Grand Rise, the Copper Indio.
Grand Rising, everybody. Sorry I'm late to the party.
Oh, I like this kind of party.
It was just explaining Pan-Indianism.
Party just started.
You know,
a lot of this doesn't happen in a vacuum. When we look around at what we see today, it had an earlier form yesterday, and that sounds like what we're talking about here with Pan-Indianism, essentially.
They're created by the Red Progressives, the Society of American Indians.
Right.
The formation is 1911, and it went extinct in 1923.
Now think about what was going on at the same time when you talk about the 1920s. Wasn't Marcus Messiah Garvey out speaking about a lot of the same concepts after he had gotten his British education in the United Kingdom? So look at the timeline. What's going on at the same time? There's a confluence of things happening. And just because we see Pan-Africanism now, we don't see anybody talking about Indians, American Indians, as much in the same fashion. Doesn't mean that wasn't going on before, because like you see, we got proof that was happening alongside and in the build up to what we now call Pan-Africanism.
Think about it. Pan-Indianism was first. He didn't fund the UNI until 1914. And the one thing that you have to check if you start looking around, these people, these same doctors, Indian doctors, Indian preachers were in the same universities together. Timelines.
Education. Education is key when you're talking about all of these people that are pushing all of these ideologies because they got them from somewhere. We talk a lot about master teachers. When you look at in the schools of anthropology, you talk about Franz Boas. You're talking about the people that were in the Tavistock Institute. That's getting into some creepy stuff, but everywhere you have movements like this, you have people in education, in higher education, colleges, to be exact. And then not only that, but also look at the people that we saw coming out of HBCUs that we saw as leaders in these movements, as far as in regards to our people. The creation of a lot of these ideologies happened between 1911 and 1914. That's not a coincidence. Because what was happening around that time? We were getting ready to go to World War I, or the Great War, they called it back then. And you had, for the people that were not involved in the war directly, they were getting herded into camps, into ideological camps, because they were serving a higher interest in grouping everybody together. So how many American Indians got between Indian termination that we talked about last week and this pan-Indianism? How many people got disillusioned with this whole identity of being an Indian? Mm-hmm. Well, they just wanted to peacefully live on their land and take care of their families. And you had all of this going on. The other thing that doesn't get talked about either is when later on, when you have the NOI, how many people took issue with them because they said, look, we don't have issue with these other folks. We just want to live in peace. I mean, there's interviews, and if you look hard enough, you can find them. Interviews where people are saying, hey, I don't like this Malcolm X fella. I don't like none of this Nation of Islam stuff. I'm talking about our people. Not because they were against what the cause was for, but they didn't understand it necessarily. They were trying to be peaceful people. You gotta remember, a revolution is gonna be a small, or anybody trying to have a revolution, it's gonna be a small group of people, it's gonna be a small minority of people. The majority of people are gonna more or less try to keep the peace. So, and that's not to say any of these causes aren't just. It's just to say that these groups started up, and they were very small groups, but a lot of people were alienated from them. And so, when you look back at it, a lot of American Indians were disillusioned with being American Indians because of things like this.
And shout out, no sellout, because of you, when I read and research, it's the main thing I go for first, the timeline. And this is the most interesting thing, where you can start seeing what really happened. Pan-Indianism came in 1911. You got Drew Ali's movement in 1913. You got Marcus Garvey 1914. Do y'all see the things that's pulling us apart? Do you see the creation of it?
Yeah.
Think about it. Marcus Garvey set up his thing. He set up the Black Star Line to start moving mislabeled African Americans to Liberia. That's 1923. Check. Okay. The American Indian, Pan-Indianism, well, we won't say Pan-Indianism, we'll say what was their name? Hold on, real quick, give me 1 second. The social, the American Indian, Society of American Indians, that was formed in 1911, but it was extinct in 1923. Everybody following still?
Yep.
Yeah.
We have Drew Ali movement. Well, no, we have Marcus Garvey sets up the boats by 1923. 1923, the Society of American Indians was taken down. At the same time, you have the Science Temple, the Moorish Science Temple. This 1923 year is very, very interesting, y'all. When you look at all the parties that was at play, all the organizations that was created to pull us further and further away from who we truly are.
Yeah.
Right.
If I could just add to it, I remember when we were pulling different links to the different organizations that started on one side all around the same time, 1923. Other organizations on the other side, and if I'm saying that incorrectly, I apologize, but were also started in 1923. So it was
you had the British Organization of Tribal Bands, Canadian Federation of Indians. Yeah, all these things are setting up at the same time. This is not a coincidence.
Yeah, it's like both opposites, left and right, were being set up at the same time. The opposing teams, should I say, so to speak, were being set up at the same time.
Mic check.
1 2 1 2.
Peace to the chat. Copper Color Ancestor, Grand Rising. Michael Brown Harris Cheek still here. Grand Rising. Who else we got? Randy James. Peace, peace. Randy James. Lachey, peace, peace. Liz Robinson, Grand Rising. Pamela Hall. Diaspora L. David Corey back in the chat. Peace, y'all. Peace, y'all. Peace, y'all. Doo Vision. Grand Rising. Who else we got? Who else we got? Who else we got? Who else we got? Thumb slow. Dion Low. Peace, y'all.
Now, what was majorly going on in the 1920s that would actually get a lot of our people to start moving in this particular direction? The so-called race riots of the 1920s. Tulsa, Oklahoma, your Rosewoods, your burning of what they call Black Wall Street. Now put all this stuff in line with each other, because none of these are separate events. All of this is happening at the same time. So you're burning down our ancestors' businesses and stores at the same time. You have these people out here telling you this movement and how we can be free and all get along. Just get on this boat and go to Africa. Oh no, my brother, pick up this book that tells you that your allegiance go to this foreign country. Look at the movements that was being created at the same time. That this fear tactics was being done to our ancestors. We must start putting all this in context. We have to stop reading these situations and thinking they're isolated events. They are not. They go hand in hand. And nobody noticed that both districts got burnt. North Carolina was Greenwood District. Ain't Tulsa, Oklahoma was Greenwood District too?
Yep.
Uh-oh. How many more Greenwood districts were there? Uh-oh. This did not happen that long ago. They like Ms. Gabrielle said, they created a solution first, got it in order, then they created a problem. Gave you a reason to run to the created solution because they made it look better. This thing on? Hello? Can I be heard?
I was about to say, mic check.
Yeah.
It's crazy, y'all. It's crazy when you get to actually put it in context and look at it.
Mm-hmm.
They created all these different movements, then started burning down your way of life, pushing you towards these created movements.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happened in 1924? Any Indians that didn't run, that didn't change and jump ship, they became U.S. citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And I laugh because it's not funny. It's just to the point when you look at it, and it's been in our face the whole time. And it's once you start putting the pieces of the puzzle together and not going so far back, and you got to remove the emotion from it.
Right.
Right, because emotion, time and time again, has always been used to manipulate us. They realize how emotional we can get about certain things, how we react to certain moves. We were talking about triggers before. How triggered we can be about certain things. And they just use them with impunity to get us to react a certain way. It works every time. How many times you heard somebody use it that's not one of us use the N-word and get popped in the mouth for it, or worse? Just, I mean, without even the discussion, without even, hey man, why'd you, what's up with that? No, just that's the first thing we do. People know this, and they know they can use that to get under our skin. They know they can use that to help to make us fall in love with certain ideas or certain products.
Mm-hmm.
Think back to a little bit later in the 50s when they're talking about how to sell to the Negro. They realized, if you look at that video, it is all about how the Negro feels about a product. And that's any product. That could be shoes, that could be the Quran, that could be, that could be the Pan-African agenda. That could be anything. Because all of it's a product. And they can teach you to love or hate whatever product that they need you to. And the other thing, like Bones was saying, how often do you find it, if you pay attention, are the same people that cause a problem prescribing the cure? And it's not them saying, hey, this is a way out. It's not just that. It's, hey, there's a way out, and this is why you need this way out, because of what horrible was done to you, and we know the way, and you need to follow us and be dependent on us, be a part of us. These are the people that are affiliated with those who cause the problem. Why was there such a controversy with Marcus Garvey having secret meetings with the Ku Klux Klan? They had the same interest in getting you out of here, sending you to other places. So you can't just follow somebody because what they say sounds good. You got to think about what they're talking about and look at the context. Who are these people affiliated with? What are these people really doing? And like Bones said, all of this stuff was happening at the same time. Everybody was being atomized. Everybody was being sliced and diced. It's the same thing as intersectionality today. Everybody's got a different perspective. Everybody's in a different part of the demographic. So we're going to split you up by your demographic, and we're going to make you all be separated and have separate interests and think separately, think differently about each other, and actually go after each other because you're different. This is no different than what was going on in the 1910s and 20s.
Sad but true.
This puts a different spin or a different perspective on that paperwork.
What, you talking about that one that come with time?
You said what?
You said paperwork. I had a flash showed up. You know that paperwork that comes with time attached to it? I'm allergic to that.
Right. Right.
You mentioned it, and I start breaking that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a big club. You got to get in the big club, right? So you can be protected from society. You can be protected from everybody that's done you wrong. And all of these people banging on folks that don't look like them and don't even realize that same ideology came from people that don't look like them. That don't like them either. That started that whole movement to get out from under them.
Oh, you're breaking up, Copper. You're either breaking up or you're back on.
Yeah, I'm at the base, so that's signal's a little bad. But can you hear me? My check.
Yep, loud and clear. Don't worry. I'm confined to one of this rising.
All right. Well, yeah, these same ideologies come from people that don't look like us, that don't like us, that started the ideology to get away from us. Now they done taught us their way, and we're using it on ourselves.
To get away from ourselves. Yeah.
Right.
Think about it, Copper. You said it. They use it to get away from us, taught us how to do it to get away from ourselves.
A vacation from ourselves.
That's
I
right.
want that type of vacation. That come with like bracelets and 3 meals a day. No, I'm good. Matter of fact, and it's not even that. It's the 13th Amendment that make me look at it crazy. Want to say again? Involuntary servitude or slavery is illegal unless convicted of a crime. So the moment you convicted, what are you?
Slave.
Oh, yeah, I can't do that, y'all.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, it's just like on the slave road, like when they had in 1830 to 1850, how they had slave schedules. You didn't name the slaves, you enumerated them, right? You numbered them. What you get when you go to prison? You get
A number. Thank you,
Exactly.
Papa. Thank you, because the slaves is the prison rolls. Who is cooking? And we ain't talking Crisco.
And when you see all of these groups, you always hear about, I mean, it's not that it's happening to everybody in the movement, but you always hear about folks getting arrested and being proud of being arrested too. Cycling into and out of the prison system. I mean, it's just as absurd. It's just as absurd as praising people for paying taxes. Like, why are you paying taxes? That you don't have to. I mean, if you gotta pay taxes, then so be it. But you know, we got propaganda now in our political parties that say, "Well, be a good citizen and pay all these taxes." You know, and some of them we have to pay. You know, it makes sense, but we don't look at it in the same way of taxes being used to do things, right? We always think, well, my tax money is going to go to this and go to that and go to the other thing. We go to the sovereign states, don't pay taxes at all. Just get out of paying taxes altogether. So when you have to go and be accountable for that, because you're using the money, you're using money that the reserve is creating, but you're trying to get out of paying taxes, and you don't have a legitimate status that the IRS is going to respect. They're going to take everything from you because you didn't give them what's theirs. All of these ideologies work with, and think about who owns the biggest stock in the prison system. These same banks. That's why you always see people get hemmed up over taxes with all of these groups. You see them get hemmed up over civil disobedience with all of these groups, refusing to comply with all of these groups. All of them got you proudly going to jail or prison to prove a point. But now you're in the system. Now you're track and trace. And once you track and trace the first time, anytime you do anything, you're in the system already. So who is this really help? Who all of these movements really help? Now you're the mic.
Mic check. Can y'all hear me?
No, but I can hear you.
Okay, my bad. I keep getting unstable internet.
There you go.
This rising. I don't know what's going on.
You're not clear now.
We're at Impact the Indian New Deal and Beyond, right?
Yes, I believe so.
I'm reading. Whew. The New Deal dramatically changed the course of federal policy toward American Indians. Its impacts were many and highly significant. Perhaps most important economically was stopping the previous erosion of land base. Except for some losses of land in the 1950s due to U.S. tribal termination policies, the land base preserved by the IRA remained intact through the remainder of the 20th century and served as a foundation for future economic development projects. Other important changes also occurred. Tribal governments regained a substantial footing for protecting tribal and individual rights and protecting natural resources owned by tribes. Indian New Deal legislation also extended federal benefits to tribal members for health and education services. The legislation encouraged tribes to adopt modern forms of government and set up more formal process for tribal governments to interact with the federal government. It also provided loans to tribal governments for economic development. Hold on. Why would they need to? Okay. A loan shouldn't be necessary, right?
That's a loan is to make the group getting the loan subservient to the people lending.
Right.
Remember, debt is also used as another form of control.
Right.
If they can convince you to go into more debt, then you kind of got to do whatever you need to do to make your lien holder happy.
Right.
So if they're giving you a loan to buy a certain thing or buy a certain product, they have a lien over that. And
right.
based on the contract, depending on how the contract is signed or how the contract is worded, they can always come and seize whatever asset that they're giving you the capital for. So you kind of work for them at that point.
Gotcha. The Indian New Deal had opened new opportunities in employment and job training to American Indians and established a foundation for future economic growth of tribal communities. For example, the Civilian Conservation Corps Indian Division, CCID, created jobs, started a flow of funds into reservations, and constructed important and needed infrastructure, roads, buildings, irrigation, canals, etc., on reservations. For all these reasons, the Indian New Deal represented a major change in U.S. Indian policy. Tribes can now once again function as largely independent governments and gain a stronger hand in directing economic development. On the other hand, unemployment on reservations remained higher than national figures throughout the rest of the century, and most tribes were not able to fully achieve economic self-sufficiency. The Indian New Deal reserved nationwide programs of forced cultural assimilation. The federal government encouraged continued production of American Indian arts and crafts and stopped requiring attendance at Christian religious services in government schools. On the Indian Arts and Crafts Board, tribal members could trademark their own art products and gain assistance in marketing their wares. Religious traditions were also saved and rejuvenated, and other aspects of cultural heritage were preserved. The assembling of laws, court decisions, presidential executive orders, and other aspects of the legal history of tribes by Felix Cohen led to the publication of Handbook of Federal Indian Law, 1941. Over the next 60 years, a major new branch of U.S. legal system grew, known as Indian law. Volumes by other legal scholars would follow in the next several decades addressing Indian legal rights. Unfortunately, detrimental changes in U.S. Indian policy were soon to come. Many tribes suffered major political setbacks in the 1950s when Congress sought to abolish reservations and tribal governments. Interesting. To do this, Congress began terminating their federal recognition trust status. This period became known as the termination period in U.S. Indian history. It was based once again on the ideas of assimilation that had fueled the allotment period of 1887 to 1934. This action cut off federal social service benefits to terminated tribes, including health care and education support. Congress wanted to place tribes under state jurisdiction and responsibility. This effort continued until 1960 when opposition to this approach finally ended assimilation attempts. What? Anyone there?
Yep.
Okay.
Sound like you got questions, Ms. Gavin.
Okay. I don't know if this is a now question or questions or later questions, but all right. With everything I just read, what throws me on everything is just this last sentence in this paragraph where it says this effort continued until 1960 when opposition to this approach finally ended assimilation attempts.
This is where you start seeing civil rights movement take off. I mean, because there were components of it that had already started, but this is where you start seeing it become a national discussion, where they're talking about it on the news, and you're starting to see big moves being made.
Right.
But at that point, as far as assimilation, the damage had already been done.
Right.
How many people at that point were assimilated urban Indians that were told that they were black?
Yeah, I got a bunch of questions. I'm gonna read. Well, see, okay, here's the thing though. A lot happened from the 1950s to the 1960s. There was a lot of stuff going on from the 1950s to the 1960s. And even with factoring in civil rights, what about civil rights that put a halt to the assimilation attempts that were being established with terminating tribes and
civil rights actually helped assimilation.
And see, right? Okay, that's what I was about to say.
What is civil rights? Civilian rights.
Right.
What is civil short for? Civilian.
So non-military.
All Indians became civilians in 19th citizens, basically.
Right.
Citizens. All Indians became citizens in 1924. So to help assimilate all the ones that didn't get caught up in the web before, you get the last and you get the majority of them with the civil rights movement. A lot of people came out the civil rights movement pro-black.
Right.
Until this as well, and this is another thing that I talk about with progressivism. Not so much progressivism in the modern sense of political party, but I mean progressivism in the sense of every decade something happens, and during that decade, a narrative is built up and then torn down. So look at from the period where you have all of these groups start up that atomize us. By atomize, I mean break us apart into smaller and smaller sections based on identity or perceived identity. We have all of this buildup breaking us apart from being who we are to being, being a more, to being, part of the Nation of Islam, to being a Pan-African, all of these groups, these separate ideologies that our people are affiliated at one point or another with. So we're all split in a bunch of different groups, and tensions are built up. The media's stoking the flames of it, and it hits a fever pitch in the 60s. It becomes a powder keg, and it gets explosive in the 60s. And so what's the answer to it? The answer to it is to make everybody to be a citizen and a civilian and seen the same way, and they have access to all the same stuff. They're not separated, okay? So you cause a problem, and then you prescribe a solution. The solution being that we integrate. So we don't need our own people to necessarily run our corner store. We can have other people come in and start a corner store for us to go to. And they have all of these nice, shiny products. And remember, I go back to it again, the video, the tutorial on how to sell to the Negro. That was being set up. They knew integration was coming. They knew that there was coming a time where they would have free access to our communities, and they could come in rather than intimidate us and fight with us. They could come in and sell to us and make a killing.
Yep.
So, and if I'm saying this wrong, definitely correct me. The perspective that I'm getting from this all the while, from the beginning, even now, is that assimilation, going back to the establishment of the IRA and different organizations, assimilation was the goal then, and continued to be the goal, unknown to the different groups that were sparked up or established from what was happening. So it's like
Oh no, they knew. These dudes knew what they was doing, Gabrielle. They were all in school together. These dudes were graduating from Howard, Yale, top line schools. Again, where did they get finances from to graduate from these schools? If you really want to know what's going on, follow the money.
Exactly. Because the money is going to show you who's really benefiting from what's going on. Right. And these people tend to be hidden. You never know when the media talks about it, you never know who's banking all the money from it. Because the media runs interference.
Right.
They're never going to tell you who's making all the money unless they point at an individual and want you to be mad at this person.
Right.
Otherwise, they're never going to tell you where the money's going. You kind of got to follow that on your own.
Right.
And when you look at education makes a ton of money. Education makes a ton of money in order to essentially facilitate itself, to keep itself going, right?
Right.
So, in that sense, all like Bro said, all of these guys are going to school together. All these guys are in the same fraternities. It's all the same, but you never know that either because they don't talk about where they went to school. You just get the message from them, you get emotionally attached to it, and you follow suit.
Right.
That's why I say again, you have to remove the emotion. It's hard, but you must. That's the only way you're going to see this clearly. Because what was this really all about? They owed obligations that they did not want to pay anymore.
Right.
To the Indians.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about. Once you get assimilated, they don't got to do nothing for you no more because you're Indian. Because you're no longer Indian. Why else would why would the federal government terminate tribes and want the states to take on the responsibility? This is why. Because if the federal government did it, you would have an umbrella rule for all tribes, meaning them federal tribes, the ones that do get the funding, if all tribes were up under that, all tribes would have to have the same thing equally. So to bust that up, you make the states responsible because all states have their own laws.
Right.
They govern themselves. Any power that's not, and this is the mistake people keep making, any powers that are not in the Constitution belongs to the state, then the people. Again, so if it's not written in the Constitution, the state can do what it wants as long as it doesn't violate the Constitution. So they can regulate tribes how they want to.
And you see why it was so important to make sure that tribal governments were undermined?
Yeah.
If they couldn't overtly do it through terminating them, they had the states work with them to minimize their ability to self-govern.
Bingo.
And like Bone said, the integration thing, the side effect of it, I mean, because again, like I said, we had legitimately bad treatment of people.
Right.
And a lot of us either are old enough to or have relatives that are old enough to remember when this was going on. So they can tell you. I don't need to tell you. But at the same time, the side effect of what went on that worked in tandem with this was the fact that, like Bone said, it made everybody the same. So do you understand why you keep hearing this rhetoric about you the same as us? You need to just deal. That's what that's about. That's why they keep telling you to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. Because they see you as no different from them. They work really hard to make you not, right? They work really hard to make you not think that you're an Indian. To make you forget. And in your amnesia, you're the same as everybody else. That's why they don't talk to you about the Indian War. They don't tell you about none of the stuff that we've covered. Because all of that reveals what they actually did, how this place got under their control. That reveals that. And this is worse. This is a worse travesty than any depiction of slavery or Middle Passage that you can see on TV. This is far worse. And this is something that also, like Bone said, there is a debt that's due to these people that it's not in their interest to pay. And while they can't completely lie about that debt, they don't have to admit it either. Which is why they'll never tell you that you are not an Indian. But they won't come out and say it either.
What do they tell you? You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. So they're not going to say yes, and the government not going to say no, you wasn't. You notice they just hush on it, but you can go on their government sites and you can read through the National Archives, and it's there, black and white, right in front of your face. Then what it tells you, Congress wanted to place tribes under state jurisdiction and responsibility. This effort continued until 1960, when opposition to this approach finally ended assimilation attempts. What happened in 1960? Isn't that the rising up of your so-called civil rights movement?
Yeah.
So why did they stop? Because they created the opposition of it to make you feel like, okay, this is in your best interest. And they gave you a multiple choice. And I think me and Nocella had this conversation. I've always had a problem with multiple choice. Because who answers are you telling me to pick from? Because neither one of them is mine.
Right.
You created a situation, then gave me 4 choices to pick, but you picked the choices for me. Is that really choice or illusion of?
The illusion of.
David Corey come on the show today. Gabrielle and Nocella bring out excavators and dump trucks. See what y'all done did? You still there, Gabrielle? Which window you in?
I'm still here. You don't know me. It's really interesting to see it being read out and explained out, all the options, multiple choices that were given to us to choose from. And those multiple choices, those, I'm not even sure what the right word to use. I'll just use multiple choice. Those multiple choices given still were all a part of assimilation and not about preservation, not about it. Those choices created a confusion within culture. It created a confusion within family. It created even more divides, more splits.
Just look at your choices from the 1920s again. Pan-Indianism, which deals with global Indians, not American Indians. You had the Morris Science Temple. You had Marcus Garvey. Or you just don't do nothing. A, B, C, or D. Now doing nothing, you're gonna be like, it's bad, it's bad. So either A, B, or C gotta be better. But when you do the research and you realize A, B, and C was financed by the same people that's pushing you that way.
Right, and they don't, and that option, that last multiple choice option, all of the above.
No, D was to do nothing. At this time in 1920s, you could have stayed because a lot of people chose not to do anything, kept on, but they had something planned for them. They came back and got them in 1934, Indian Reorganization Act. See, they did this in ways because, like Copper was mentioning, you just couldn't come out and just broad brush everybody at the same time. No, this is the plan. This is strategy laid out over years. This is with the end game in mind. We thinking about right now. A lot of this stuff was planned out. You got to remember, they studied us for over 200 years.
Yep.
This ain't no overnight plan. This is well thought out. And please don't get it twisted. You should know by now you have American Indians on both sides of this, willingly. I don't know if y'all got the chance to get down to trust responsibilities yet.
That's where we're at right now.
Oh, we talking trust? Uh-oh.
Now I'm gonna just say this. This is day 3, where I got 3 paragraphs in, and the rest of the page is still trying to process to upload.
No problem.
Just want to put that out there real quick. Trust responsibility. Oh, wait. It's coming along. Okay. Trust responsibility refers to the federal government's legal obligation to act in the best economic interest of tribes. During the period of 1887 to 1933, the federal government had trust responsibilities not only for the remaining tribal reservation lands, but also to protect the assets, timber, minerals, water, soil, and grazing resources of individual allotments. The Office of Indian Affairs was to supervise the sale, lease, and administration of tribal lands and Indian allotments, and also receive, invest, and distribute the income from these lands to tribes and individuals. The Indian Agency was to be a good steward of the assets of individuals and tribes. Trust responsibility. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead and finish reading.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, now in the previous live stream, when we were talking about Indian termination, I mentioned Pruitt-Igoe. And I was talking about how they made this splendid housing tenement that was supposed to give everybody in the urban setting a nice quality of life, pleasant place to live and be proud of. And it was great for a while. But then they stopped paying people for upkeep. So you didn't get maintenance to the elevator. You got people sitting there, 10 stories up, no functioning elevator. You stop paying people to clean the grounds, to tend to the gardens, keep the place looking nice and functional. You start breaking the families apart, taking father from mother. And in some cases, removing the children.
Right.
And what do you end up after a couple decades of this? You end up with a slum that used to be a pretty nice place to live. This is the same thing that you see happening now with this, what we're talking about. Where in the beginning, it was great. Where the federal government's promising, hey, we're gonna trust us with this land. Trust us with this land. We're gonna take care of it. We're gonna make sure that all the animal rights and the mineral rights of the land are protected for the Indian. We're gonna make sure that these places are as pristine as they were before anybody even showed up. And it was good for a while. But then later on, they started to say, what they tell us with Indian determination. Well, it might be a little more financially advantageous if we just let the states do it. We're gonna offload some of this responsibility, some of these promises, some of this trust that you put into our hands. And what do you see happening? You see the land get whittled away. You see bits and pieces of parcels get sold off to other folks for farming or for development or whatever have you. And so at some point you start seeing not only the land be whittled away, but the people be whittled away. Because now they're all being sliced and diced and joining different causes. They're being terminated in some cases. They're told they're not Indians anymore. They're being told they're other things. You're seeing the same thing. The destruction of the reservation, aka the ghetto or the projects, is the same allegory for what's going on here with the tribes and their trust. Because the moment the government finds that it's not advantageous for them, or they say, hey, there is a certain mineral that we really need right now. Let's say shale. Let's say we need shale and it's under the ground. We didn't know it was there 100 years ago, but we need it now. Oh, there's oil deposits that we found that we didn't know were there before. But we're going to change this game real quick. We're going to change the rules a little bit. We're going to take this land because we need it. And you've seen people in tribes protesting the government before. It's still happening now. That ain't stopped. Even with all this COVID stuff going on, it still ain't stopped. People are protesting. And as you can see, there's still litigation against the tribes for land that was previously protected. That's all I meant to say is that you see the same play is happening. They start out saying, hey, trust us. We'll take care of it. But then the responsibility slowly begins to shift off to everybody else. I apologize for being long-winded about that. But I yield the mic.
No, I mean, that makes sense.
Like Wild Indian Root said, ultimate chess. It's a game of chess. We're not going to go and take the whole board all at once. We're going to do it piece by piece by piece.
And by the time you notice it, it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yahtzee.
Because reading this, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said Yahtzee.
Yeah, reading this tells me that, I mean, going off of Wild Indian Roots comment, Ultimate Chess, it's 2020, but something that was implemented in the 1800s, a chess move that was calculated 100 years ago.
Because when you play chess,
playing out now.
The stability of chess, that's chess.
Yeah.
You make moves that you might not benefit to 10, 15 moves later.
Right.
And you have to be able to think multiple moves ahead.
Right.
Again, this is long-term strategy. You were continuing or?
Yeah, I was waiting for the page to.
No problem.
Okay, I'm continuing. Trust responsibility was defined early in U.S. history by the U.S. Supreme Court. In the 1831 case of Cherokee Nation versus Georgia, the court affirmed that the United States had a responsibility to tribes much as a guardian to a ward. As the stronger player in this relationship, the United States had a responsibility of trust to look out for its wards, in this case, American Indians, and to protect them. This concept would appear later in councils with Indian tribes, where the government negotiated treaties with tribes.
Mm-hmm.
K-Love put a question in here. If they never honored the treaties, doesn't that mean we aren't bound to the treaties?
This is the part where you have to put it in context.
Okay.
The treaties got broken when American Indians picked up arms during the Civil War. Why do you think after the Civil War in 1865, 1866, all the tribes redid treaties? Because the treaties were null and void because tribes picked up arms against the United States.
Mm.
When you study the ones that they got rid of, the ones that they got rid of immediately were tribes that picked up arms against the United States. So they had to renegotiate. That's why you had the 1865, 1866 treaties.
Right. Despite this legal responsibility, despite this legal responsibility, for decades, non-Indians, often working for the Office of Indian Affairs, plundered the assets of tribes and individual American Indians. Trespassers encroached onto reservations and allotments with livestock. They grazed the range and often destroyed the ground cover and caused erosion, while others stole timber from reservations. They cut the trees and hauled them off for their profit. When the Office of Indian Affairs set up a timber sale on Indian lands, at times they falsified the amount of timber or paid unfair prices for what they sold to lumber mills. Little oversight of the agency's actions existed. That is crazy.
That was on purpose.
Minerals on Indian lands, often having more value than forests, provoked even more plundering of the assets of American Indians. This problem was especially severe when oil discoveries promised to make the tribes in Oklahoma wealthy. Being shrewd crooks, often working with dishonest lawyers, bankers, and politicians, private individuals and federal officials created numerous ways to steal the wealth of natives. Often they insisted on being named guardians. Some American Indians, especially orphans, ended up with their 8 or 10 guardians. Each taking a fee for looking out for the non-competent person. These events were scandals, only particularly known but increasingly talked about in the 1910s and the 1920s.
Trust us, right?
You know, I'm wondering how many, I guess you guys understand why this question is just posed in my mind. I wonder how many children who were in foster care and group homes, what tribes and what families and what lands they may have been attached to.
Now imagine how many children were put on them things but never left their tribes.
Correct.
People just claimed them.
Right. With the turmoil of the Depression in the 1930s and the advent of the Indian New Deal, Indian citizens could act as informed participants in New Deal developments. Wait, what? Hold on. With the turmoil of the Depression in the 1930s and the advent of the Indian New Deal, Indian citizens could act as informed participants in New Deal developments. Several Indian speakers came into the public eye at this time to discuss issues important to their tribes. This included issues touched in the 1933 Indian Reorganization Act, IRA. The IRA granted new obligations to the traditional trust responsibilities, which had existed since the 19th century, with tribes now officially granted more rights in self-government and economic development, including taking advantage of their own natural resources and providing for cultural preservation. They could become more independent from the federal government's earlier domination of Indian affairs and preserve their way of life.
Which really isn't true, because if you open up the Indian Reorganization Act, what it really did, it stripped them of the ability to self-govern, because now they have government place officials running the tribe.
Right. You're exactly right.
It's the same way the Patriot Act does a whole bunch of unpatriotic things to its own citizens.
Uh-huh.
The name sounds good, but the devil is always in the details.
Right.
You don't read the law and you just say what the law's name is. It sounds great. But when you read the details, you start saying, wait a minute, this is a raw deal. That's why a lot of this stuff that was offered to these people has been cosmetic. A lot of what's been offered to us has been cosmetic.
Right.
There's no substance underneath the name or the image of somebody doing something.
Next paragraph gonna tell it all.
I'm ready. Okay. Hope I am. Oh, give me just a second.
Miss Gabrielle take care of what she got to take care of. I'll go ahead and read it. It states the IRA, however, was not without controversy amongst Indian tribes. Under Title III, the act transferred allotments of Indian land to communal tribal control. This troubled thousands of Indians who considered the allotments as legally theirs and did not want to turn their land over to a communal controlled system. Vocal opposition to the Title III in the 1930s gave Indians a higher profile publicly and with the government, and gained Indian status as a thoughtful political participants. So just think about that for a second. They broke up tribal lands and gave it to individuals. These individuals started setting up shop, started living life, then they come back and say, you know what? All that land that we gave you, no, you got to give it back to the tribe now. And not to mention that the tribe is controlled by the United States government. It goes on to state, it did not, however, stop the plunder of Indian resources. Just as before the Indian New Deal, resources continued to be diverted from reservations and allotments to the detriment of the tribes. Among the most valuable of these resources in the American West were water and water power. Although reservations were mostly created to promote civilization through agriculture, non-Indians took the water that could have helped make farming possible. Power companies worked closely with the Office of Indian Affairs officials to secure dam sites, often ignoring the tribal government. They would build hydropower facilities that flooded reservations. Again, power companies work closely with the Office of Indian Affairs officials to secure dam sites, often ignoring the tribal government. They would build hydropower facilities that flooded reservations. So a lot of times you've been wondering why you can't see a lot of things that was left behind, things that would build a lot more of our history, because they flooded it and it's underwater still. How many stories have you heard of these lakes and stuff being drained and you finding a whole village up underwater?
Yeah.
They put them up underwater.
So is it that far-fetched that you thought? Michigan that just drained from that dam breaking. My bad, Copper. You know. No, go ahead, brother. I was saying, I wonder what they're gonna discover. I don't know if y'all saw that lake in Michigan that drained after a dam broke.
Yeah. Wait, a dam broke and a lake drained?
I believe that's a sequence.
Yeah. I'm like, no, sir. I wonder what you're gonna find there.
Is it really that far-fetched to see what came with the storm when Katrina hit, and this massive amount of water flooding into the wards?
Right.
I mean, where was the Army Corps of Engineers before and after the disaster?
Oh, these people ain't got jobs now or something? No, they still working. Okay.
Right. Do you see why President 43 was so offended at what Kanye West said about him?
Right.
Think about it. That was the most offended he got in his whole presidency.
Out of all the things that people said, even shoes being thrown at the man.
Right. He laughed about that. He dodged some shoes like it was the Matrix, and he laughed about it afterwards.
I'm from Texas.
But right. But the thing that got under his skin was when he was called a racist. And you know why him being called a racist was so harmful to him? Because it wasn't just that the idea that he doesn't care about these people. It was getting dangerously close to admitting what the Army Corps of Engineers was doing.
Yep.
Setting the disaster up right before that storm hit.
It ain't my fault.
Yep. Because who built the dams? I'll wait. Who in their contract cannot be found legally liable? Oh yeah, you can't sue the Army Corps of Engineers for them dams being faulty, no good. They knew when they built them they were no good.
So when horrible things happen, and then when you cry out for justice and they say, well, can't no justice be served because all of it was legal, you can't go back and complain about it. Now you know who set it up.
Bingo. And it goes on to state, after over a century of fraud, corruption, and just plain bad record keeping, a major lawsuit was filed in 1996 on behalf of 300,000 Indians against the Secretary of Interior, claiming that Indians had lost at least 10 billion through the years. Favorable rulings indicated the case would likely force major changes in how the federal government carried out its trust responsibilities. 1996, they got a favorable ruling. Start coming into 1997, the early 2000s, they start kicking out freedmen. Uh-oh. What's really going on here, brothers and sisters?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, check this out. We're going to break you off. We're going to help you out. Yeah, we know we did you wrong, but we'll give you this. But in return, we need you to remove a couple of people. Keep these numbers down. Because the larger the numbers get, doesn't that increase the payout and the responsibility of the federal government and the states?
It's awfully convenient. And you know, another thing, now that we're on the subject, Another thing that you tend to notice whenever there's a prize being given out or goodwill being extended that isn't quite such, they have to remind you this is a good deal. This is in your interest. Notice how a lot of the programs that we've been talking about, most people, including some of us, have only heard about when we found them by looking for them or by looking for other things and just happen to find them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't market a lot of the programs that we've been talking about over the last few months as, a really good deal for you. But we've seen that these are actually pretty substantive. It's the things that they tout. It's the things that they say, hey, this is in your interest. This is a good idea. You should go with this.
That's what you need to be cautious of.
Exactly.
And you see it, Sankofa. You don't never see no advertisement, no big broadcast on public television with telling you about all the things that you can use to fix your situation. And you notice in our community, they made sure that we looked at the government very suspect and program suspect. No, so like, you remember when we started with the HUD Section 3 and people only knew about Section 8?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because we constantly bombarded about Section 8, Section 8, Section 8, Section 8, but numbers didn't start at 8.
Who does that? Nobody. That's why. Gotta check for yourself.
That's like saying we're gonna start the Old Testament at Malachi, y'all. That's what we're gonna start reading. Right before the New Testament starts.
Mm-mm-mm.
And you sure don't see people on NPR talking about, and I don't mean to pick on NPR, but you don't see it out there in media where NPR is like, hello all, if you got a problem in your neighborhood, start a nonprofit, start a 501c. There are a whole bunch of, they don't ever tell you any of this stuff. They don't ever tell you apply for HUD Section, 4 or 3 or, No, it's just, well, there are a whole bunch of people on Section 8 and they're on the waiting list to get housing. That's all they tell you. Because that's what they want to funnel you into. Not having anything.
And make sure that you know about it and have a very bad distaste for it, so you won't do no further research to see what else is attached to it.
Exactly.
Do you know just by being on the housing and getting a lot of them services already, you qualify for the majority, over 50% of the programs that we discussed up to this point so far? Then how many brothers and sisters have EBT and shouldn't look on it as a bad thing? Because I personally know police officers that need EBT.
Mm-hmm.
School teachers, a vice principal. But I say that to say this, that allows you access to some of these programs. It puts you at the front of the line. And if you pay attention and do research, you'll see others get that benefit and they make sure they show up to get that access to the front of the line. We have to start using it.
And please remember, these people no smarter than us. They're not necessarily better connected. They've just encountered the information and decided to make good on it. Whereas it gets hidden from us, and then for those of us that do see it and start talking about it, there's something wrong with us. We're agents. Because we talked about a federal program that actually helps people. We're agents because, we've shown people something that can actually help them. This is why our people don't get anywhere. But complain about how They do a little bit better every so often. Every generation do a little bit better, but they never really get there because it's not designed for you to get there. The same people that are sitting in front of the door will not show you the door. They'll show you the fake door next to it and say, "Hey, come on in." But they won't show you the exit that really gets you out of your situation and where you need to be. And the people that do actually find the exit get vilified for that. Think about what we've been talking about and what all of this means and why it's so important for you to not figure out any of this. Most of you all are here listening to this program because you figured out that they didn't want you figuring out that you were an Indian. So think of how deep this goes. This is like Inception. Now that you got out of that one level of it, now go even deeper and see how deep all of this goes. But because of the fact that you're an Indian and they didn't want you to know that, how much else do they not want you to know?
Sorry about that. I had a call coming real quick.
Oh, that's all right.
The next part is the self-determination area. Another major period beneficial to American Indians began in 1970. One more time. Another major period beneficial to American Indians began in 1970. Please put a pin in 1970.
Hold on.
Self-determination was announced in a speech by President Richard Nixon, served 1969 to 1974. What you were saying, Ms. Gabrielle? Yeah.
I'm not laughing because it's funny.
I know it's laughing because they try to make it seem like, okay, no, the whole nation was able to self-identify for the first time in 1970.
Right.
Everyone had the ability to self-determine in 1970.
And this 1970, it comes after 1924, 1934. It comes after that, right?
Yeah, after all the stripping, all the different categories, all the different things that push you further away. Once you've been pushed so far away, oh, you know y'all can self-identify. But with what? Your culture and everything has been stripped and erased from you. So you're going to self-identify with the image that they gave you. Oh, well, they look like me. They talk like me. Oh, so I guess I am black then. You get what I'm saying?
You know, okay.
Remember what they're saying, self-determination. But what are you determining it from? What are you determining you are from? From the images and stories that someone else gave you. It's a multiple choice.
It's starting to break you up, bro.
You know, okay, here's my thing. And this is something that I actually struggled with as a child. To say I'm black, there was a stopping point. There was no history, no explanation, no nothing, no birth from these grandparents to this mother and father. There was nothing. There was just, I'm black, which, I mean, there was nothing attached to being black, if that makes sense.
That's correct. I agree.
I think that I think they're getting you too.
No, I'm saying I agree.
No. Okay, do I sound like I'm breaking up?
Nope. I might have been breaking up.
No.
Don't be so hard on yourself.
So by this point, them saying, "Oh, you can self-identify Black, no culture, no history, no identity, no definition other than Black." It makes sense. You do this.
Oh
You
no,
do
you
this
had a
because you.
definition. You had a definition of what the
Huh.
60 gave. Say it loud. I'm Black and I'm proud. Black power. You had an image. They gave it to you. You got a whole decade to be bombarded with this. Then they give you the multiple choice test. Because by this time, they done created all the categories they wanted on the census. They gave you a multiple choice.
Yeah.
It's my culture, and I want it now.
Might check 1 2 1 2. That's better.
2 1
Yep.
2.
Yep. Yes, sir.
All right, switch devices.
Doom devices.
No, might take them a while to try to mess up this one. Brand new IP on this one.
Coming to get ya.
To continue, it says the idea of political and economical self-determination emphasized against the independence of tribal governments. The Indian Self-Determination and Educational Assistance Act of 1974, built on the 1930s Indian New Deal policies through self-determination policies that included large amounts of grant monies. Many tribes greatly increased their economic and political power. Tribes could gain more direct control over reservations, social services such as reservations, day schools, and health care. Now, why would that be very interesting right there?
The workforce.
Got a whole lot of people self-identifying as Indians right now. You have a whole lot of these tribes that were bought back as government entities, benefiting by allowing a particular set of people into their tribes.
Right. Now, I got a question because this is 1969, 1974. So up until 1974. Now, if and maybe I'm missing it, so correct me what I'm missing. While they're talking about, we're reading about schools, education, social services, and all this not really being established or being utilized properly, funds not being distributed like they should on reservations. There are still public schools being established off reservations. There are still social services being established and implemented off reservations. There are still daycares and healthcare being established off reservation, right?
Uh-huh.
So with everything that is being neglected, so to speak, on reservation, those things are being extremely focused on. And if I'm using the wrong word, just let me know. Those things are being focused on off reservation and structured off reservation.
Not really being structured. The ability to structure and build it off reservation is there. Because again, at this time, the reservation of the 1970s is not the same reservations of the 1800s.
Right.
Remember, they got rid of all of the tribes in 1934. They bought them back in 19. Right. This is not about tribal Indians anymore. This is about the government getting Indian resources to make a profit. So why would they do anything to benefit any tribal member on the reservation? To this day, the misnomer is Indians that's living on reservations get checks. But if you do the research, no, the upper management does, and the majority of them are not even Indian.
And the IRA then still has the same responsibilities and goals now.
Yeah, what did they build it for? To assimilate the Indian. So why are we expecting them to do anything different?
Right.
They told us who they was. We just let them off the hook. Shout out, Denny Green. Think about it. The one thing that is for sure that has always remained the same through reading this, their position never changed.
Mm-hmm.
Their position, no matter what, right or wrong, their position is still the same thing. Assimilate the American Indians.
So would it be fair? I'm sorry.
If you don't do it, it boils down to this, and it's simple. If you don't do it for you, somebody else will.
Right.
Now, do you want it done in your interest or in someone else's?
I got a question.
Shoot.
And this is just how I'm thinking, and it could be wrong. It's just, all right. Would it be fair or likely to say or think that in a way that what's being preserved on the reservations, the ways, the language, as they put it, arts and crafts, the Indians on reservation are actually preserving a part of our history and culture. They're suffering through preserving.
But you got to rewind, Gabrielle. You got to remember what you read 2 days ago.
Okay.
A lot of the Indian culture was created too.
Oh, crap. Okay. You're right. Dang.
A lot of that stuff that was being passed through on reservations, a lot of that isn't real.
Right.
A lot of that was created and they gave us bits and pieces.
Got you. Okay.
Because you have to remember, what is their agenda? Don't ever forget, first things first, what is their agenda? What is all this about? Erase everything, color, race, because none of that exists. What is this about?
Yeah.
Assimilating one culture into another culture.
Mm-hmm.
Study history. This isn't new. This has always been going on. But there is a solution. Again, you have the ability to do it for yourself. We have the ability to link up and become communities again and do for ourselves, produce for ourselves in our future. Because history shows us what happens when we sit back and allow others to speak for us or to represent us.
Right.
Especially when they never lived, like they know nothing about you. Your way of life, nothing. But they had the audacity to tell you they know what's best for you. No, who knows best? Who knows who knows the needs of the people better than the people?
Right.
That's why here we take the approach. We're not here to tell you what to do. We're not here to tell you who you are. We're just here to present the information. So if you choose to use it to be a part of rebuilding your community, uplifting the American Indian, this is where that work gets done.
I want the audience, if I could, just real quick, I want the audience to remember why it is Americans have a sense of freedom. Why it is that the people that live here, especially in the United States, talk about freedom so much. Because when they came here, these were the last free people that they knew of on the planet. Your ancestors were the last free people, the folks that made the pilgrimage here, discovered on the planet. That's why you are as important as you are. That's why this place is as important as it is. This land represents freedom because of you.
Yes.
And if you give your freedom up to others who come and tell you who you are and tell you what's good for you, tell you what you need to eat and need to not eat, you will wake up and find yourself no longer free. Why do you think it's so important that they keep telling you you were a slave, that your people were subservient to other people? When you go back and find the records, and you find this wasn't the case. These people were employees, like you and I are today. Why did they have to tell you that you were useless, that you were worthless, that you were lazy? Yet on the other hand, you built this country. You built this country long before they got here. You didn't build it under their whip or their threats. You built this because this is your home. Your people, your grandmothers, grandfathers, your ancestors built this place because this was their home. And I repeat, our people were the last free people on the planet that these folks discovered, that these folks encountered. You were the reason America represents freedom. Do not let other people come and tell you who you are and strip you of that right. As Brother Michael Easton said the other day, it is your birthright. Do not let them strip you of your birthright. Our ancestors, our cousins, our brothers and sisters, in the past few decades, in 100 years or less, have been taught, coerced, and in some cases forced out of their identity. This cannot happen again. I yield the mic.
Gabrielle, you think you can read the last paragraph of the Self-Determination Act? I got to check that out real quick.
Yeah. Thanks to the new policies, by the 1900s, the Indian population was growing rapidly in size. Tribes were substantially influencing the economies of a number of localities in the United States. Industries exploiting the rich natural resource located on tribal lands, tourism, and commercial enterprises, including gambling casinos, began prospering in some areas. Organizations such as the National Congress of American Indians, NCAI, intensively lobbied both Congress and the White House for favorable consideration in any new U.S. domestic policies. Whoa. More about Native American or American Indian. Peoples whose cultures existed in North America prior to the arrival of the first Europeans are variously referred to as Native Americans and American Indians. Both terms are regularly used in U.S. laws addressing Native issues by the general public as well. Their use has varied through time, and neither are particularly appreciated by those to whom the labels are applied. The term American Indian was first used by earlier European explorers in the 16th century. The word American comes from the first name of explorer Amerigo Vespucci, who landed on what is now the American mainland in the late 1490s. Indian refers to the peoples of the Indian subcontinent who Christopher Columbus mistakenly thought he had contacted.
We know all that's false. We know all of that is false, false.
Correct. As Europeans continued colonizing the New World, the term American Indian continued in use despite the wide variety of native groups that lived in North America, and the fact it was not India that Columbus found. To the colonists, all the native groups were primitive and uncivilized. Thus, a common name was collectively applied to all. The individual native groups had names for themselves in their own languages that commonly meant the people or human beings. By the mid-20th century, the term Native American gained increasing use. Anyone born in North America of any ethnicity, however, could be considered a Native American. By the 1980s, American Indian became favored once again by Native peoples. However, both terms are objectively objectionable to natives because to them the terms reflect the racism of the dominant white society. American Indians prefer reference to their tribal affiliation when possible, such as Navajo, Oneida, or Lakota, when referring to a group of people who are members of several tribes. Then American Indians is preferred given the lack of any other commonly accepted term. However, the use of Native Americans still continues as well. The Johnson-O'Malley Act of 1934, which had provided funds to support and care for American Indian students by granting federal dollars to state and local school districts, remained unchanged until it was amended by the 1974 Indian Self-Determination Act. The law greatly revised the Johnson-O'Malley Act by following the BIA to contract with Indians directly so they could provide for their own education needs. The JOM remained effective into the 21st century, playing a major role in supporting Indian education. Its primary purpose was still to provide supplementary financial assistance to meet the specialized educational needs of American Indian children. JOM funds were in addition to other local, state, and federal monies. In a precursor of later affirmative action, encouraging increased representation of minorities, hiring policies, the New Dealers also introduced new procedures in hiring that allowed members of tribes to gain employment in the Office of Indian Affairs. By the late 20th century, the BIA had become not only predominantly staffed by American Indians, but with an Indian as its head. Tribes had considerably more say in how BIA funds could be spent for Indian services. So question, can you hear me?
Yeah, come on with us.
All right, question. So what I'm noticing, and this is just me, it could just be my mind. What I'm noticing is that there were things implemented, acts and whatnot that were implemented from early 1900s and around 1910 to 1934. There were acts, there were policies, there were all these different things put into motion and put in place from 1910 to 1934. Then between 1960 and 1970, there were other acts and policies put in place that basically revisited the initial acts that were put in place between 1910 and 1934. Now, even with saying that, the acts that were implemented and put in place and policies that were implemented and put in place between 1910 and 1934 also went back and it was like rewriting acts that were implemented in the 1800s. What I'm seeing, and again, just correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm seeing is a pattern of acts and policies, initially treaties put in place, and then sometime later, within a 10-year census time, if that makes sense, with counting people, like the amount of people, who they are, where they're at, resources, jobs, labor, all that stuff. And then they're revisited, but it's not until what I'm seeing just in this, it's not until the 60s, 70s where all those acts and policies are kind of revisited all at the same time within that 10-year span.
Because in order to win the game every time, you got to move the goalposts.
Oh.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like I told you, they had to sell us a deal that we couldn't refuse.
Right.
And then they had to come back later on and amend. This is why you have amendments to every law that passes in this sense. When you talk about treaty, they have to go back and amend it because the nature of things change. Whenever they have a ceasefire, when they have war, and what was the Bureau of Indian Affairs created from? What was their stance on us?
To assimilate, to dismantle the tribes, to assimilate.
Right, but that was part of war, right?
Right, exactly. Yes.
Okay, so because Indian removal was an act of war. That was we're going to remove you, and we don't care if you want to do it or not.
Right.
Okay. So the offshoot of that is what we have here with these treaties. So they say in order to have a ceasefire, we're gonna give you this, and we're gonna be responsible for this.
Right.
But they got to change it after a while because now they realize, like I was saying earlier, that their interests may have changed, or now it's going to be easier to get you into something else. So we're just gonna adjust this treaty a little bit to push you, to nudge you gently into something else.
Right.
And like Bone said, if you don't pay attention to it, after a while you wake up and realize, wait a minute, what happened? Why am I off my land now?
Right.
Why don't I know who I am now?
Right.
Because this is taking generations, and they take just long enough for the people involved originally to be gone, and for their descendants to not remember what happened. Then they roll the next phase of it out. That's progressive. They're progressively steering you into a place where you have no rights and freedom like you did before.
Right.
So when they tell you to move, you just move. But you have to. You don't have a choice. Because they couldn't do that to you initially. They had to chip away at you, piece by piece. That's what these amendments are doing. Right. Chipping away until there's nothing left. Come on, I just want to give you a little bit of clarity on that thought.
No. I appreciate that and thank you, because this is current. This is happening right now.
Right, and see, but the other thing that's used to redirect and divert your attention is they keep talking about 400 years ago. Keep talking about 1619. Keep talking about slavery. And they say, oh, well, slavery was way back here, and you don't need to worry about that because this is who you are now. Focus on now, and just remember back then when we need you to be worried about things. But that takes you off of the focus of how recent all of this went down.
Right. And see, I'm confused because 400 years ago, see, that doesn't line up because World War I was in the 1800s, mid 1800s, right? Late 1800s.
1900s. You talk about World War I, that's top of the 1900s. Like 19.
And then World War II happened in the 40s?
Yes.
Okay, so that's still, okay. and correct me if I'm wrong, I could be messing up timelines and I don't want to do that. But when it comes to pulling all this information, attaching the word slave or slavery, I don't see being implemented into anything until the early 1800s. And that doesn't add up to 400 years ago.
It's never gonna add up. It's a created story. What did they give the slaves to tell them? Well, certain people, what did they give our ancestors to tell them why they should be fighting back in some cases? A rewritten Bible. There's rewritten Bibles talked about people having to be slaves for 400 years, and then they'll get their time. So right now you should just accept it and go along with it.
Right.
It's a created story. Like Copper Indio said, we have been under attack from multiple angles. And if I come up to you and I chop off your leg, you'll know it. But if I'm just poking you with a needle every now and then, but a million of them, over time, I'm just picking you apart. So there's, like you said, there's nothing left. You don't look like nothing what you was before.
Yeah, you don't feel the initial bite of a mosquito until it's drawing blood.
Exactly. Why are we appalled now? Look at how appalled we've become that our children are going to school and being taught right now in school that they don't have rights. Think about that they just have privileges that can be taken away from them at any point. You're talking, these are descendants of free people now saying that they don't have rights because they're being taught that. Progressivism. What is it really? What are they progressing you towards? Can any of your leaders tell you what they're progressing towards? Can any of these politicians tell you what they're progressing towards? They just say progress. Do this, do that. Everything's compulsory. You don't have a say. Just do it. It's mandatory. They only got here by chipping away at generations of us.
You know, okay, I'll just say for me, this puts a heavier perspective, should I say, on being Indian. If that makes sense. Mic check.
1 2 1 2.
Okay. I have to keep checking. I keep getting this little thing that says your internet is unstable. I'm not sure.
I think you should worry when it says unavailable. Otherwise, you should be all right.
Okay, I'm reading. We Okay. Okay. By the mid-20th century, the term. Okay. Okay, no, I read that. Okay. Okay, I read that too. In a precursor of later affirmative action, encouraging increased representation of minorities, hiring policies, the New Dealers also introduced new procedures in hiring that allowed members of tribes to gain employment in the Office of Indian Affairs. By the late 20th century, the BIA had become not only predominantly staffed by American Indians, but with an Indian as its head. Tribes had considerably more say in how BIA funds would be spent for Indian services. Notable people.
Hold on. See, you speeding through that. You got to go back.
I realized I had read that. That's
no, but there's
look.
First line.
You ain't never been in this restaurant before, and you breezing through the menu.
In a precursor of later affirmative action. Who did they tell you affirmative action dealt with?
Oh.
This is the precursor to affirmative action.
Encouraging increased representation of minorities. So they now
No. Rewind it. Affirmative action was supposed to be for who? Blacks? Negroes? So why would policies dealing with Indians be the precursor to affirmative action? Unless these are the same people.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Technically, it couldn't be a precursor because it would be two separate policies dealing with two separate groups of people. Right. A precursor means it's what came before, correct?
Right.
Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah, it says in a precursor of later. A precursor to affirmative. Oh.
That was it. You can't speak.
Thank you, Bones. Thank you, Bones. Appreciate you. Keep me on my toes. Come on now. Keep me on my toes.
But who is the main winner of affirmative action? Even though it was put under our face, who really gained from this? Uh-oh. We don't have to say it out loud, but that will be another topic.
Yeah, because wouldn't it be fair or safe, or I don't know, wouldn't it be fair to say that when it's talking about that new members of tribes gained employment through the Office of Indian Affairs by late 20th century, the BIA had become not only predominantly staffed by American Indians, but with Indians as its head. Wouldn't it be fair to say that these are now assimilated Indians who are now predominantly staffing an assimilated?
Yeah, but that was before this, because remember, these are the people that they sent to schools to learn these particular things and sent them back in. If an Indian is working in the BIA, what is the BIA created to do?
Assimilate.
Exactly. So I don't care if you're an American Indian. The department was created to assimilate Indians. You can't get around that. That's like poison. I got a gallon of poison, and I put a drop of vitamins in it. Does it change that it's still poison? That it started as a poison? And that's what we got to remember with some of these things. You cannot forget what it was designed to do, because they're still doing it. Their policy hasn't changed.
Right.
Let's put it like this, though. Affirmative action put a whole lot of so-called European women in college and high-paying jobs and Fortune 500. Let me leave that alone. But that is of the day. That'll take up a whole week there.
Yeah, it would, because I'm tempted to go in on that myself. Everybody else that claims to be a minority along with you. Everybody else. And that goes in tandem with the intersectionality that I was talking about. Yeah. So they're not just doing it to our people, they're doing it to the whole U.S. population, slicing and dicing by race, by gender, by anything you can think of. It's not even just those two anymore. They're slicing people up by whatever. Religion, history, Doesn't matter.
Like they said, women was the main winners of affirmative action. But what women? Ha ha.
Do you understand now why they have to tout how many of our women go to college? I mean, it's a great thing that our women have access.
Go to what?
Sorry.
Wait. You
go to college.
You said how many of our women go to what?
Go to college.
You just say both. How many of our women go to college? And they let you know, oh, so many women graduated this year from college and have jobs, and they show all women faces. But when you look at the numbers, it is not all women.
Exactly. They just show you that in studies so that you believe it, not that that's actually happening.
The largest winners of affirmative action is white women. Why do you think that women's movement used to be that black fist in the air? And I'm not saying this to be funny or nothing, but if you study history, it shows you. They have always piggybacked off of us to the point they even convinced the American Indian woman that they had the same fight. And I said this before, tell me whenever we was in the situation to tell our women, you can't work, you can't do this, you can't do that. Right. When we both in the same situation. We got sucked up in a fight that had nothing to do with us. Our energy is always being siphoned for someone else's purpose, and we must stop this. We got to stop getting emotional. Because once we get emotional, we blind, and we run behind anything, right into the explosion, and wonder why we blew up. Not I.
Exactly. Whenever they show you that image of the two women with the fists in the air that's representing the first wave of the feminist movement, who's the other lady in the picture? They don't look like her. It's Gloria Steinem. Now go look her up. I ain't talking about the panel. I'm just saying in your free time when you got a chance, maybe check that lady out and see who was paying her to come in our community and throw her fist up like that, like she's one of us.
Grand Rising.
All right.
Grand Rising, y'all. Grand Rising.
Peace, Mike. Peace.
Yeah, if you do it, if you do the numbers and you look at it, it was European women, women who identified as white, got the most resources off of affirmative action. Used these programs and the benefits and took them back to their communities and made their husbands CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Y'all better go look and see where these finances came from to start a lot of these Fortune 500 companies. You don't start a business with the money out of your own pocket. No, you spend other people's money.
Roll call. Peace.
So what other people money are they? Oh, go ahead. No, child, my bad.
Oh, my bad. You still going? My bad. Grand afternoon, Celestine Wilson, David Corey, Mr. TJ, Pamela Hall, Lachey, Randy James, two witnesses. Grand afternoon. Who else we got? K Love. Peace. Who else? Wild Indian Roots. Grand afternoon. Carrie Bay. Peace, brethren. What's going on? Right. Big Nelson in the Twitch chat. Peace. Grand afternoon. Who else we got? P. Parker. Grand afternoon. Doodoo Vision still in the room. Man, hold on. I'm catching up.
Did you say
hold up. Dion Lowe. Diaspora L. Is that what you're gonna say? I ain't say that yet, but I just did. You lost. I what? Grand Rising and afternoon to everybody. Mike Easton and L as well.
I say it's interesting when you stop listening to what people just want to tell you, and you start researching and looking at the numbers and who really gain and who really lose behind the scene. It lets you know that's how the majority of all them European women got to college and got them degrees. Affirmative action. Because affirmative action is for minorities. And the largest minority is who? Women. Because they include all women. You see how they pull them numbers together for their benefit? Well, we can't do the same on our side. I'll wait. Gabrielle, you was finishing through the notable people.
Yep. Oh, I thought I was. Not sure, just, okay, give me a second. Give me a sec. I don't know. Okay, so it just went blank on me and said untitled. So I'm refreshing, pulling up the page. I apologize. Okay. I apologize. My computer is really moving slow. Okay. Notable people. Maybe it has something to do with the cookies. I don't know.
You may want to restart the browser, clear your cache.
I mean, I shut it down. Okay, I'll do that later. Let me get through this. I see what wouldn't shutting down my computer restart the browser and everything?
Restarting your computer shuts everything down. I was just talking about restarting your browser.
Oh, okay. I'll try that later. Notable people. I'm here now. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. My bad. Okay. Notable people. Felix Cohen, 1905 to 1953. Cohen was the brilliant attorney who helped shape New Deal policy towards American Indians. Born in New York City, Cohen graduated from City College of New York, then earned a graduate degree in philosophy at Harvard in 1929 and a law degree from Columbia in 1931. When Franklin Roosevelt began his first term as president, Cohen left private law practice in New York to join Nathan Margold in the office of the solicitor in the Department of Interior in Washington, D.C. Cohen's first assignment was to draft the Indian Reorganization Act, IRA. Now, question real quick, so I can understand, make sure I'm seeing this right. The fact, okay, it has 1905 to 1953. That's the year he was born and the year he died? Can y'all hear me? Anyone? Mic check?
Yeah, I'm starting my machine up too, so I can't really look at that directly just yet. But what were the dates?
It says Felix Cohen, 1905 to 1953.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So that would be the year he was born and then the year he died, right?
Right.
So, okay, it's saying that he went to City College in New York. He earned a graduate degree in philosophy at Harvard in 1929 and a law degree from Columbia in 1931. When Franklin Roosevelt began his first term as president, Cohen left private law practice in New York to join Nathan Margold in the office of the solicitor in the Department of Interior in Washington, D.C. Cohen's first assignment was to draft the Indian Reorganization Act, IRA. He was pretty young doing that, right?
Yeah, he would have been at that time.
He was like in his 20s. In 1929, he would have been coming into his 20s, 1931. Yeah, he was really young. And the Department of Interior the IRA is under the Department of Interior, right? If I'm remembering correctly.
So, yeah.
The Indian Reorganization Act is under the Department of Interior.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cohen, working closely with the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, John Collier, charted a major change in federal policy towards American Indians in the IRA. Following passage of the IRA by Congress, Cohen and Collier toured the United States in 1934 to discuss the law's provisions. In the late 1930s, Cohen compiled the various treaties, laws, and court rulings related to the affairs of Native peoples. The materials eventually filled 46 volumes and were condensed into the landmark volume on Indian Law, Handbook of Federal Indian Law of 1941. Cohen also served as an attorney in a number of cases involving tribes. In 1947, he represented all the Pueblo Council to force New Mexico and Arizona to provide public assistance to aged and indigent natives. In 1948, he left the Department of Interior to engage in private practice, public service, and teaching. He continued to serve as general counsel for several tribes and published widely as a legal scholar. Hold on. I feel okay. we're reading about notable people for the federal government or for the Indian tribes?
Well, what is this about? The BIA. So that would be for who?
The federal government.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to understand this, because if I'm and I don't, just correct me if I'm processing wrong.
The people that were very influential on policies and laws that were progressive to keep moving forward. So yes, they're notable people who had their hands in this to make it what it is, to keep it going on. So they're notable just to the other side. But it helps for you to know who these people are and what they did too.
Got you. Okay. Edgar Howard, 1858 to 1951. Oh, wow. Okay. 1858 to 1951. Howard was the co-sponsor of the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, sometimes known as the Wheeler-Howard Act.
He's the one who changed it, remember? The Indian Reorganization Act got changed.
Right.
It was over what they said, over 300 pages. It got changed to 6.
Yep. Born in Iowa, Howard attended Iowa College of Law but did not graduate. He was elected in 1923 to Congress and developed a reputation as a liberal Democrat. He introduced numerous bills permitting tribes to sue in the U.S. Court of Claims, tried to protect tribal and individual mineral resources on reservations and allotments, and by 1933 became chair of the House Committee of Indian Affairs. Howard lost his re-election campaign in 1934. Darcy McNichol, 1904 to 1977. McNichol was a member of the Flathead tribe and an anthropologist who worked for the Bureau of Indian Affairs during the Depression. McNichol helped shape the creation of the National Congress of American Indian, NCAI, in 1944. The NCAI became a major national organization representing tribal interests in the United States. McNichol wrote several books, including a novel, The Surrounded, The Indian Tribes of the United States, Ethnic and Cultural Survival, 1962, Indian Man, The Life of Oliver Lafarge, 1971, and Native American Tribalism, Indian Survivals and Renewals, 1973.
Look at that. Here we go again. Creating a whole new culture.
Right. Nathan Roth. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to add in. Look at the timeline. What's going on at the same time that we're seeing in Bertie County, from what I found out the other week, they're moving buildings from one part of the county to a plantation to suggest that there were slaves that lived in that house. The so-called slave quarters was moved there the same year. What else was out? Roots, around the same time in the 70s. We're being given a culture the same way the tribes are being given a culture.
Pushing us further away from each other.
Right.
By pushing us further away from each other, they made sure that we wouldn't talk to each other, that we would be out of contact. Because if we was, we could work together to fill in the gaps. A lot of times we have to realize some of our tribal brothers is on reservations, and make no mistake about it, some of them are our brothers and sisters on the reservations. They have been stripped just like us. They have been given a created culture just like us. And once we remember that we are a family that has been split and broken up, and taught to identify with each other by created misnomers,
right,
we're never gonna get out of this. Because we're gonna be too busy fighting each other. And we're gonna wear each other down. So when it's time for us to stand up, ain't gonna be nobody left. You gotta wake up.
Well, I think this is about to get really good. Shout out to you, Bobs. I'm just saying, my head ain't got no roof. Nathan Ross Margold, 1899 to 1947. Margold was an attorney, and a political activist who played an important role in shaping the reform of American Indian policies by the federal government during the New Deal. Born in Romania, Margold came to the United States in 1901, grew up in Brooklyn, and graduated from the City College of New York and Harvard Law School. He served as an assistant U.S. attorney in New York, and in 1927 joined the faculty at Harvard Law School. His appointment at Harvard sparked an intense battle because he was Jewish. Margold returned to New York in 1928 to enter private law practice. In the early 1930s, Margold served as special counsel for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Otherwise known as the NAACP. He helped develop the strategy for the future court proceedings that led to the integration of U.S. public schools in the 1950s. In 1933, as part of the Roosevelt administration, Margold became solicitor for the U.S. Department of Interior.
Now tell me, why would his work with the NAACP be something to qualify him to work with Indians? Okay.
Yeah, isn't the IRA under the Department of Interior? Just want to ask that question again.
Yes, it is.
Okay, isn't the Department of the Interior the executive part of the executive branch?
Yes, it is. Reports directly and answers to the president.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to ask that question again. Just make sure I'm paying attention. Keep me on my toes. He played an important role in promoting tribal sovereignty and rights of American Indians during the New Deal. Margold also served as special assistant to the Attorney General from 1933 to 1935. Roosevelt appointed him to the Municipal Court for the District of Columbia in 1942. He became a judge of the U.S. District Court for the District Court of Columbia in 1945. He died only 2 years later.
Check this out. I don't know if anybody else caught on to this, but did y'all notice he was working with the NAACP, the IRA, Department of Interior, all at the same time? Yep. See, they very slick how they write stuff. In the early 1930s, Margold served as special counsel for the NAACP.
Yep.
See, they don't give you a direct date. They tell you the early 30s. But if you look up a little bit more, you will, They were playing a good game of chess, y'all. And can somebody explain to me, and this seems to be one of the problems we have now, and not saying that because you're a foreigner, that means there's something wrong with you or something bad. No, people are people. But my question has always been, how can someone who's not born here, have no idea about your history whatsoever, tell you what's best for you? I'll wait.
As a matter of fact, he said he was born in Romania.
Don't Romania had it? Let me hush.
Little tangerine real quick. Shout out to P. Parker. I love you too. 3 items, 3 items every time. I do it every time.
Oh, went there for 3 items and you wonder why she coming out with 3 buggies full? Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. She said she went to Dollar Tree.
Came out like, hey, what happened?
Oh, the next person that's involved in this. Just look at the name. Look at the name.
Like, nope. You know what I do? I be like, look, double cousin, Copper, Bones, they was all on the phone with me, and none of them told me to walk out the store.
Hey, I don't be getting in people's business, you know.
And do you really want us to talk you down off of that? Do you really?
Nah.
Exactly.
Really
That's bit of the form of exercise, talking you down.
Shut up.
I'm gonna just say no.
No, I was talking about the next name on the list.
Oh no, I see this.
Y'all know who that is. Y'all know who his people is.
Do we have a dictionary?
Lewis and Merriam. Oh yeah. Okay.
Did we take definitions? It's this dictionary. I'm trying to remember the
Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Them Miriams I know. The old ladies.
Lewis M. Merriam, 1883 to 1972. That was really close to 100.
Mm-hmm.
Really close.
What, 9 years out?
Yeah, that's really close to 100.
Oh, 11, my bad, 11.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave the math to you. I'm still using my fingers. Merriam, a statistician.
Yeah, statistician.
Okay, because I was about
what
to
they
say.
need a statisticians for?
I was
taking stats.
That's what a statistician does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Collects and study stats. Mm-hmm.
Okay, gotcha.
I used to do that for the basketball league.
Oh yeah, that's what's up.
It was definitely fun.
That's what's up. Headed the significant fact-finding commission studying. Wait, hold on. Let me read this from the beginning. Merriam, a statistician, headed the significant fact-finding commission studying the status of American Indians from 1926 to 1928. So they needed someone to study before they implemented in 1934. They needed something to go off of so they can. Okay. A graduate of both Harvard and the George Washington Law Schools, Merriam became a career federal employee in Washington, D.C. What is that?
What do you mean? A career federal employee?
Yeah, is that like a career student?
No, somebody that worked for the federal government.
Okay.
As a career.
Oh, okay. He works for
the guess. Okay, yeah.
Oh, I thought you were giving.
I was just trying to help. I'd be quiet.
Okay, he worked for the Office of the Census from 1905 to 1912, Children's Bureau from 1912 to 1915, and the Institute for Government Research from 1915 to 1920. In that year, the Institute became part of the Brookings Institution, with whom Merriam was associated until his retirement in 1951.
Do you notice his studies and the years he was in the studies go hand in hand with policies that came out later? 1905 to 1912. Wasn't that 1913 and 14 policies?
Yeah.
1912 to 1915. Hold on.
And wasn't vital statistics established in 1910?
Uh-huh. This is how they did it. You would need a statistician to put that together, a team of them. But it gets better. I wonder where the funding came from.
All right. Funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, through the Institute of Government Research, Merriam and a team undertook a national assessment of the condition of Native peoples in the United States. Everywhere they found problems of poverty, poor health, short life expectancies, unemployment, low levels of educational achievement, loss of land, and failings in federal commitments to tribes. The team produced
everywhere. Man,
everywhere.
they need to stop.
Everywhere. This is what they're saying. Nationally. Nationally is everywhere within. Okay. The team produced The Problem of Indian Administration, 1928. Popularly I'm just not going to get it. Called
popularly.
Thank you. Called the Merriam Report, which summarized its findings. Considered for Commissioner of Indian Affairs in 1933, Merriam withdrew and supported John Collier, who was appointed. You know what? I got a question. While it is presented and read in this, how positively, intentionally, how the intent of John Collier was all positive and for the American Indian, Native American. I am very, I don't know if the word is intrigued or piqued at everyone's or all the people that they are mentioning, even before they're mentioning notable people. They all go through this process, and then after they go through this process, they link up with John Collier. It's like seeing a team assembled in different departments, all to come together under one person. You know, maybe I'm just okay. It might just be me.
These are all lions that come together to form Voltron. That's what's going on.
Gotcha.
And notice how that very rich family whose surname starts with an R always seem to show up when things need to globalize and federate, because that's kind of what they want. And they go and do what appear to be charitable acts. I mean, these are masters of the charitable donations and the charitable, good works and all of this other stuff. They do a lot of great things, but what is all of that to hide? This is why when we talk about, I'm going to be on soapbox, but this is why when we talk about charitable organizations, this is the stuff that people look at when they say these people are foul. Now, it doesn't have to be that way, but you can take that same power and use it to your own will, like these guys are doing. But you're seeing them and what they do in real time.
Sort of like what we did when we developed and built A2. Is a nonprofit organization that was built for the American Indian, not to be used against him or her, but to benefit them.
Yeah.
Because again, the 501c categories, which are just tax exempt statuses, the nonprofit organizations, the profit organizations, the problem isn't the mechanism. And I don't even say problem. Because can we say it's a problem if somebody else that has a different ideology chooses to build an institution to push their narrative, but you have the same choice? You don't choose to build your own. You let them build them for you. So who narrative are they pushing if it ain't yours?
Right.
So the best way to make sure your narratives and your people needs are met is to build your own. You can. And Copper India, no sellout. Have any one of y'all received the government letter saying that we can't do this?
Negative.
Man, I'm looking.
It's getting boring. Waiting for somebody to tell me what to do so I can argue, man. I'm trying to say no.
Man, listen, I done went to the post office, had to ask, hey, y'all got a letter here that I have to sign and pick up because it's coming from the government? Because it definitely didn't come to the address.
Well, you out there picking a bone. You got a bone to pick and don't even know if it's actually true. Like somebody said online that we government agents and we work for the IRS. I'm trying to figure out what my pension is. That's what I'm searching for. Some sort of paperwork. Everybody want to do paperwork all the time. Put your own paperwork.
Oh, they got letters at Dollar Tree.
Letters.
Okay, it was funny to me. Oh man, Burton K. Wheeler, 1851 to 1941. Wow, that's a long time. That's almost 100. Almost. Wheeler was the co-sponsor of the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, sometimes known as the Wheeler-Howard Act. Born in Massachusetts, Wheeler received his law degree from the University of Michigan. He was elected in 1923 to the Senate as a Democrat from Montana. Wheeler joined other liberals to work for reform as a member of the Senate Indian Affairs Committee. He sought to protect American Indian minerals and water resources. In 1934, he headed the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs and co-sponsored the Indian Reorganization Act, a bill he had not read. When Wheeler discovered the bill...
you can't do that.
I know. I emphasized on it. I did emphasize on it.
Papa Willie, 3-point turn, and let's hit that one again. One more time.
Okay, I hit it again. Here we go. In 1934, he headed the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs and co-sponsored the Indian Reorganization Act, a bill he had not read.
Come on, man. See why you need to be your own representatives, man?
Mm-hmm.
See why you got to hold people feet to the fire?
Mm-hmm.
Because the people speaking for you ain't even reading the bills that they trying to get passed.
Mm-hmm.
And you wondering why you get slapped in the back of the head.
That's right.
You keep showing up. Man.
When Wheeler discovered the bill fostered tribal self-governance, a court of Indian affairs and tribal land ownership, he turned against the draft bill and forced through a number of amendments.
What did we previously say about amendments? We're going to change the goalposts.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, what did we read? The original bill actually was going to help tribes.
Right.
So they stripped it of everything that helped it and put in everything that restricted it and made it smaller.
Right. In 1937, he introduced a bill to repeal the Indian Reorganization Act, but it failed. Wheeler continued as a critic of the New Deal policy towards American Indians until he lost his bid for re-election in 1946. Wait, what? Nope, something's wrong. Nope. What are these dates then? What are these dates by their names?
You talking about them markers that let you follow the timeline?
I'm not even being funny. It says, okay, what did I read wrong? This is Burton K. Wheeler, 1851 to 1941. Does that mean the year he was born and the year he died?
Uh-huh.
Can you have a re-election after you die?
You did? Mm-hmm.
You can?
No, I'm just saying, I notice it.
I'm confused. Okay. Okay, maybe I read this wrong. Hold on. Wheeler continued as a critic of the New Deal policy towards the American Indian until he lost his bid.
You know that's somebody we're gonna dig into a little bit later.
Well, yeah, because it says in 1937, which 37, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so that's 4 years before 1940. You know what? I'll get back to that because I don't.
Take a pen in it.
Gabrielle, come on, man. Let this blue link be purple. Leave it alone.
You know how this stuff be messing with me. Like, wait,
just come back to it.
Okay, fine. Primary sources.
Don't be mad. Primary sources.
She's like, God, dog, no, I don't want to let it go. You ain't angry here right now. How you lost the re-election and you buried for 5 years already? No, let me stop.
Yes, because that has happened so many times. Like, wait a minute. Did I read that wrong the first time? On so many different things, I'm seeing okay, you know what?
Hey, at least we know why he lost the re-election. He was dead.
Well, you ain't supposed to posthumously lose, though.
You ain't supposed to be here right now. We can't.
We really have a problem if you would have won the election. We really have something to talk about.
How did you get here? Nobody.
Not at all. Wait a minute. Unopposed.
Oh man.
Man, y'all did check that. You running for re-election from the other side?
Doesn't make any sense.
Did you come back? Did we make a mistake? Did we? I mean, like, were you asleep and we just didn't notice? We put you in the wrong box. My bad.
What exactly
happened? Put you in the bed. Like, sorry.
Help me, help you.
Man, what in the world?
I'm just confused right now.
Okay. Primary sources: the plight of American Indians in the early 20th century. I do have another question. I'll wait. All right. A 1928 report by Lewis Merriam for the Brookings Institute entitled "The Problem of Indian Administration, 1928." I think that's pages 7 through 8. Described the history of U.S. Indian relations and the resulting sad state of American Indian population. This report was highly influential in shaping New Deal Indian policies in the 1930s and beyond, and noted the following. You know what? See, here's the thing. Let me read through this. When the government adopted the policy of individual ownership of land on the reservations, the expectation was that the Indians would become farmers. Part of the plan was to instruct and aid them in agriculture, but this vital part was not pressed with vigor and intelligence. Okay. It almost seems as if the government assumed that some magic in individual ownership of property would in itself prove an educational civilizing factor. But unfortunately, this policy has for the most part operated in the opposite direction. Individual ownership has in many instances permitted Indians to sell their allotments and to live for a time on the unearned income resulting from the sale. Many Indians were not ready to make effective use of their individual allotments. Some of the allotments were of such a character that they could not be effectively used by anyone in small units. The solution was to permit the Indians through the government to lease their lands to the whites. In some instances, government offices encouraged leasing, as the whites were anxious for the use of the land, and it was far easier to administer property leased to whites than to educate and stimulate Indians to use their own property. The lease money, the lease money, though generally small in amount, gave the Indians further unearned income to permit the continuance of a life of idleness. Surplus land remain, huh?
Sound good. Keep going. A whole lot of information. There's a lot of facts they left out of that we read prior, like an hour ago.
Right.
And the problem that you have to be aware of when you read this, again, it points out in the first paragraph. You trying to tell me that they came here and our ancestors was farming and fed these people in the world, and they needed to teach our ancestors how to farm? They need to stop it. You can't fall, you know what I'm saying? That's what I mean. You got to be careful sometimes, because they'll rock you right back into it. If you're not paying attention, they'll rock you right back into it. When the real problem was you allotted Indian lands, and you passed Indians off as being competent with never speaking with them, making them responsible for land taxes immediately that they knew nothing about. That's what really happened with this.
Surplus land remaining after allotments were made. Surplus land remaining after allotments were made was often sold and the proceeds placed in tribal fund. Natural resources such as timber and oil were sold and the money paid either into tribal funds or in the individual Indians if the land had been allotted. From time to time, per capita, payments were made to individual Indians from tribal funds. These policies all added to the unearned income of the Indian and postponed the day when it would be necessary for him to go to work to support himself. Okay, you know what?
Twisting a whole nother narrative.
Right.
Now think about it. You have all this allotted land that now you have to make payments to people for. You have funds that's in tribal funds. So what happens when you eliminate all the tribes and turn all the Indians into citizens? Isn't the United States the holder of the trust? So who's holding the trust funds?
Well, did we read earlier, or am I misremembering? Did we read earlier that it said that non-whites were mismanaging and siphoning out the funds that were being received for lands and everything?
Exactly. They're not telling the full story in this, but it's good that when you read the history and you get all vantage points of it, that's how you dodge the hijacks.
Right. An outspoken critic of the Office of Indian Affairs, John Collier, was appointed the agency's head by President Roosevelt in 1933. Collier was instrumental in introducing sweeping new federal policies concerning American Indians. A key part of the programs was the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, otherwise known as the Willard-Howard Act. Collier made the following observation regarding the act in his report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, published in the Annual Report of the Secretary of Interior, 1935, pages 78 through 83. The repair work authorized by Congress aims at both the economic and the spiritual rehabilitation of the Indian race. Congress and the President recognized that the cumulative loss of land brought by the allotment system, a loss reaching 90 million acres, 2/3 of the land heritage of the Indian race in 1887. Whoa. had robbed the Indians in large part of the necessary basis for self-support. They clearly saw that this loss and the companion effort to break up all Indian tribal relations had condemned large numbers of Indians to become chronic recipients of charity, that the system of leasing individualized holdings had created many thousands of petty landlords unfitted to support themselves when their rental income vanished, that a major proportion of the red race was, therefore, ruined economically and pauperized spiritually. Through 50 years of individualization, coupled with an ever-increasing amount of arbitrary supervision over the affairs of individuals and tribes, so long as these individuals and tribes had any assets left, the Indians have been robbed of initiative, their spirit has been broken, their health undermined, and their native pride ground into the dust. The efforts at economic rehabilitation cannot and will not be more than partially successful unless they are accompanied by a determined simultaneous effort to rebuild the shattered morale of a subjugated people that had been taught to believe in its racial inferiority. The Willard Howard Act provides the means of destroying this inferiority complex through those features which authorize and legalize tribal organization and incorporation, which gives these tribal organizations and corporations limited but real power and authority over their own affairs, which broaden the educational opportunities for Indians, and which give Indians a better chance to enter the Indian service. My check.
Loud and clear.
That was the end of that, I think. I'm not seeing anything else. Hold on. Suggested topics. No, bibliographies, sources. Brookings Institution, The Problem of Indian Administration, Baltimore, Maryland. The Johns Hopkins Press, 1928. Cohen, Felix S. Cohen's Handbook of Federal Indian Law, Albuquerque, New Mexico, University of New Mexico Press, 1971. Collier, John, Report of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, Annual Report of the Secretary of Interior, 1934, Washington, D.C., Government Printing Office, 1934, pages 78 through 83. Collier, John, and Laura Thompson, The Indian Education Administration Research, Sociometry, 9, 2/3, May through August, 1946, 141 through 142. Krober, Alfred L., Culture and Natural Areas of Native North American. Berkeley University of California, Publications in American Archaeology and Anthropology, Volume 38, 1939. Philip Kenneth, John Collier's Crusade for Indian Reform, Tucson, Arizona, University of Arizona Press, 1977. Standing Bear, Luther, Land of the Spotted Eagle, Lincoln, New England. Is University of so it's Nebraska, University of Nebraska Press, 1978. Taylor Graham D., The New Deal and American Indian Tribalism, the Administration of the Indian Reorganization Act, 1934 through 45. Lincoln, Nebraska, University of Nebraska Press, 1980. Washburn Wilcombe E., Handbook of North American Indians, History of Indian-White Relations, Volume 4, Washington, D.C., Smithsonian Institution Press, 1988. Wilkinson, Charles F., American Indians, Time and the Law, Native Societies in a Modern Constitutional Democracy, New Haven, Connecticut, Yale University Press, 1987. Further reading. Bordwich, Fergus M., Killing the White Man's Indian, Reinventing Native Americans at the End of the 20th Century, New York City, Doubleday, 1996, Campaign, Dwayne.
You said Reinventing Native Americans.
Yep, it says the title is Reinventing Native Americans at the End of the 20th Century. Chronology. Thank you. Of Native North American history from pre-Columbian times to the present. Detroit, Michigan, Gale Research Incorporated, 1994. Contemporary Native American culture issues. Walnut Creek, California, Altamira Press, 1999. Davis, Mary B., Native American in the 20th Century, an Encyclopedia, New York, Garland Publishing Incorporated, 1994. Deloria Vine Jr., American Indian Policy in the 20th Century, Norman, Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma Press. Oklahoma Press, 1985. Malinowski, Sharon, and Anna Sheets, The Gale Encyclopedia of Native American Tribes, Detroit, Michigan, Gale Research Incorporated, 1998. National Congress of American Indians, cited February 20th, 2002, available from the World Wide Web at http://www.ncai.org. Wilson James, The Earth Shall Weep, A History of Native America, New York City, Atlantic Monthly Press, 1999. Also see also Civilian Conservation Corps, Ethnic Relations. Man, okay. So these are a lot of reference books that I know it's going to take me a minute to read. But reading on this, I don't know. Maybe, okay, so in my mind, to read these books would to read, and for me to have an understanding, and I guess it falls under stereotypes, so to speak, to have an understanding of the depicted stereotypes that is implemented or taught or introduced behind the acts and policies that are being enforced to uphold the need for assimilation, if that makes sense. No, yes.
No, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense, because there is because look back on the slave narrative. Look back on the justification that was made for doing what was done to these people.
Right.
We're going to put them in a better place. We're going to teach them our ways so they become better people. Remember, it was about kill the Indian, not the genetics of us necessarily.
Right.
But kill our ways. And make us like them.
I got a question. I got a thought. I think it's a question, but a thought. All right. Oh man, what's kind of processing right now is a sort of we prove it. And I say it like this. Let's say, you're constantly telling Bones, she's like this, she's like that, she's like this, right? And Bones doesn't see it, but you're constantly telling him that, she's slow, she's lazy, she's savage, she's uneducated, she's all this, right? Bones doesn't see it. And then the opportunities that you get, as far as me and you interacting in front of Bones, you do things that will trigger a type of reaction out of me, to the point where, let's say one day I blow up on you, I flip out on you, copper, la 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 la, and then you look to Bones and say, see, now you see why we need to implement this. See, you get what I'm saying?
Yes, the root of a lot of these stereotypes, and you could argue most stereotypes, is a self-fulfilling prophecy. You talk it up, look for an instance where that could be framed as true, and you say, okay, when it happens, well, there it is. You got all the proof you need, right?
Yeah.
And I meant to remark as well while you were reading.
Poke that bear. Wait a minute. You just poked the bear.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I meant to remark while you were reading that, I was thinking about it while you were reading, that look at all these stereotypes they've given to the tribes. Look at these stereotypes they've given to all of us. This is exactly what they've given to us as stereotypes, isn't it? We're lazy.
Yeah, and
we're
it's crazy.
How huh?
Yeah. How do reservation Indians have the same stereotypes as Black people? Or African American?
Because regardless of what they think about you, regardless of what they call you, they think the same thing about you.
Right. Whether
you're the Negro or the Indian.
You can call yourself what you want. This is what we still think about you. You say whatever you want, but this is the ideology that we hold behind it.
Right, because every generation or so, every few decades, we can go back and call you something else, or convince you to call yourself something else, and still treat you the same way. Think about it. At this point, the government just asks us, well, what do you want us to call you? And we go proudly tell them all these other things, right? And they say, okay, well, we'll refer to you as this, but they don't treat you any differently because you're called something else. And that's why we also shouldn't have any delusion that declaring ourselves as Indians to be Indians should make anybody treat us differently just because we said that.
Right.
For one, we have to live that. We have to be that. We have to be the Indian. Not just say we are. We have to be that. Be what we are. And we also have to make sure that people treat us as such. We do not give people reason to treat us like what they claim or think we are. when they see us. Because not all of us, very few of us actually, are going to actually change how we look. We're going to be the same people because we've always been the same people. So when people look at us, what are they going to see? Unless you tell them what you are, they're going to think you're something else. And all those stereotypes. Right. Exactly.
You see the importance to music and television when it comes to propaganda, and why it's so repetitious, why you don't get anything new. With all this creativity and all these people, you get the same things recreated over and over and over. Repetition. It's repetition that's done on purpose for your reprogramming.
That sounds like a cancer cure or a moon landing. Repetition.
The father learning
all
is
this,
repetition.
I'm just saying, all this talent out here.
Don't if you do anything so many times over and over, don't it become a habit? And the habit becomes you?
Yeah.
And something you said was false in the beginning. Now, well, it's kind of reasonable.
We have to stop being so reactionary. We have to stop waiting for somebody to push our buttons and provoke us because they need us to act a particular way to justify something that they want to do.
Right.
Stop letting people hide behind our images and our faces. I mean, any more input on what we covered over the last 3 days dealing with this?
I mean, aside from it being a little bit more intense, a little bit more serious, a little bit more heavier, a little bit more responsible.
The thing I like about it when we do this is also it shows the solution. And the solution isn't anything hard. It's us taking on responsibility. Us being very uncomfortable of letting others.
Phones, you're breaking up.
Mic check 1 2 1 2. Sorry about that. Call came through in the middle of speaking.
1 2 1 2. I thought it was me. I'm up here clicking stuff on my computer.
And if there's no more input on what we covered, we can go ahead and let everyone get on about their day.
One.
Nah, you breaking up.
So it is me.
No, it is you now. You all right?
Salad time.
Can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Do I sound like I'm breaking up?
Mm-hmm. No, not at all.
Okay, salivations.
Nope. Yes.
Okay. Let me know if I start sounding like I'm breaking up. Like I said, it keeps saying my internet is unstable. Okay. Salivations. Continue on your genealogical journey. It is important. Know who you are so that no one can tell you who you are. Pass it along to your family, your children, your friends, your neighbors, so that they can know who they are, so that no one can tell them who they are. Genealogy is important. Genealogy is key. Anyone telling you that genealogy is not important, anyone telling you that genealogy is not key, setting you up for being able to tell you who you are. Genealogy is extremely important. Continue doing your genealogy. Continue pulling those records. Sometimes those records won't be easy, and sometimes those records won't make sense, but pull them, get them. Genealogy is key. And again, know who you are so that no one can tell you who you are. Census Day was April 1st. The census has been extended out until October 31st. So we still have time to do the census. Do the census. Not just because it's required by law. Make yourself count so that you can count. Period. When we pull genealogy records, we're pulling census records. That's one of many records that we pull. So who will come looking for, who will be coming looking for you like 150 years from now? Do the census. You got the decennial census that happens every 10 years. You've got the ACS census that happens every month and every year along with the decennial census. You've also got the agricultural 5-year census that also happens alongside the ACS census and the decennial census. And there's so many different censuses out there. Make yourself count so that you can count. Because if you don't make yourself count, someone else will make you count. If you don't fill out that census and put your voice, which is one of many ways we get our voice out there. If you don't put your voice out there, somebody else will speak for you. So do the census. Again, make yourself count this so that you can count and get actively involved. The census affects housing. The census affects schooling. The census affects so many different aspects. Do the census. Peace to the panel, peace to the chat, peace to the silent majority. Shout out to you, double cousin. Appreciate you. Wise words and all.
Mic check 1 2.
Shoot, can you hear me?
Can hear you now.
Okay, my bad. I don't know what happened. My whole screen said nope. Your mind is a garden. Your thoughts are the seeds. You can grow flowers or you can grow weeds. Where flowers bloom, so does hope. All things share the same breath. The beast, the tree, the man, the air shares its spirit with all, the life it supports. Piece of the panel, piece of the chat, piece of the silent majority.
All right, what you got for no sellout?
Ain't nobody doing that. Questions, comments, concerns, and/or corrections, peace to the chat. Please email us at attentionsassembly@gmail.com. Don't be afraid. We're here. We're always here. Except this weekend. Shout out to Bones in the neighborhood, in the graduating class. Peace, 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 peace to y'all too. Zoom link.
Feeling tired.
Shout out to Brit as well. Concocting things, mixing things up. The mixologist. Not for music too, I guess. Yeah. So shout out to Brit. But yeah, man. The Zoom link, I'm about to post it in the chat. The number is on the screen. The email is about to go in the chat. It feels like a Friday. It really does. So I'm ready to do something. Bones, I'm ready to do something. I think today is that day. But yeah, peace to the chat. Y'all know who y'all are. Silent majority. Y'all know who y'all are. Multiple chats. Twitch. Shout out to everybody over there too. Peace, y'all.
All right. I see we have Mike Easton still with us. Anything you want to say to the chat before we get out of here? I don't know if he's still on the line that just called in.
Yeah, I'm saying I was just listening to everything. Grand Rising, everybody. Peace.
All right.
Shout out to Bontown, South Dallas.
Yeah.
My bad. I went back to the chat. Bontown, South Dallas.
Yeah.
P. Parker.
Hanging out with us this weekend on the Zoom call.
Liz Robinson. Lachey. Charles Clark. Grand afternoon. Macadon 1. Peace. Macadon 1 was here this weekend. It's the afternoon. Well, you out here salutating. Dion Lowe again. I'm just going back up. Hold on. Charles Clark. Hold up. My bad. Mr. TJ. Celestine Wilson. Y'all better check out Celestine's Instagram page. Get rid of the get lost, y'all. Y'all better stop playing. These people is out here working.
Hey, they've been on it. They've been getting it.
Can I share this real quick?
No. Nope.
Just how I saw it. Just real quick.
But it's my salutation.
Okay, you're right.
Nah, it's cool. I ain't got nothing to say. You see I'm up here lollygagging. Big Nelson, shout out to the chat. I'm on mute.
An Indian respects a brave man, but he despises a coward. Interesting enough, I saw a coward as co-ward.
Ha.
Uh-oh. What you got for him, Coffee Indio?
All right, I'll be as brief as I can. Today in the U.S. is Memorial Day. Out in the East, and to those who observe it here, it's Eid Mubarak, blessed celebration.
You know it.
Yep. And it's a time for family. A lot of people can't really move around too freely anyway, but it's a time for celebration with family and reflection of what family means to us, how we relate to the Creator, and how we relate to each other. And I think with all the things that we've learned here today and all the things we've discussed, it's, I think, poignant to spend some time with your relatives. Those of which you can't see, check on them. Check up on them. See how they're doing. And remember, all the horrible things we've seen and read about where these people have split us up from our kin, taught us different ways, and taught us a different identity and a different culture. Taught them a different way and a different culture, and kind of revised history to make it seem like it's always been that way. We have to remember we are still family. And we should celebrate in that. And as we go forward, after the holiday is done, into this upcoming week, we should do the creator's work. Part of that involves mending these ties with our families. Teaching those of us that don't know about their identity, about their genealogy. This is the one of the main ways we undo the damage that was done. There are other ways, and many of you are already engaged in them. Many of you have already started your businesses. Many of you have already started your community gardens. You're already getting it done. So when people complain that nobody's getting anything done, you can say, no, there are people getting it done. You've seen it. There's proof. I was scrolling through Instagram this morning, with this rising rather, and I was looking at Pete Rock's Instagram account, and he was talking about how Jordans are made and how stupidly inexpensive they are to make. Yeah, we're paying hundreds of dollars for them. We're standing in line while the police.
$4. Yeah. $4 to make a pair of Jordans.
That's right. It costs less to make a pair of Jordans than it costs to get a value meal at McDonald's. And that's what I put in. That's what I put in my reply on that post too. And we sitting there letting other people make billions of dollars on the production of these shoes that we call our culture now. What do people think of when they think of Jordans? They think of our people. They think of a guy that looks like us, flying up in the air, dunking on folks. We have to reclaim this. And a brother replied to me and agreed with me, said, yeah, man, I wish I could figure out how to do this myself and, you know, and maybe even do some hoodies and some t-shirts and stuff. I said, well, here you go, brother. Not even 10 minutes later, I gave him a link showing him all the tools he needs to get to manufacture shoes that cost about $4 each to make. This is what I'm talking about. This is the proof that you can cite whenever people complain that nothing's getting done, that we're not taking this place back. And I don't just mean in terms of territory, I'm talking about in terms of our identity and our place here. It's happening. And you should take joy in that. So I'll cut it off there. And I thank you all for listening, for tuning in, for calling in, for chatting, for debating, for having a conversation about it, because this is what we need to be talking about. This is relevant to us. So if you all have a happy Memorial Day and happy Eid Mubarak. And we'll get back to it in the rising.
All right. Thanks again, Gabrielle. No Sellout, Copper Indio, Mike Easton for hanging out with us this rising. And we're going to leave out with this. Again, we go through a lot of information that'll help us understand what happened. But as we go through this, we got to make sure that we put our emotions aside so we don't let the same things that history showed that sidetracked us, pushed us away, happen again. And like Brother Copper Indio said, on this day, this is a day that we should remember. Because a soldier isn't just someone that goes in a battlefield with a weapon. A soldier is that individual who notices that there's something wrong. And against all odds, and no matter what it costs that individual, they stand up and speak the truth. So my brothers and sisters, I ask of all of us on this day, let's remember our ancestors and what they gave for us to have this opportunity just to speak on this platform every rising. Let's remember what they gave so we can have a brighter day. And let us return that favor for the generations to come by continuing to work in our communities, by continuing to reach out to each other, by continuing to build the infrastructure that we need now and to move forward. So until we link up to the next Rising Show, remember we love you and peace.
Peace, everybody.
Peace, everybody.
Warning, warning, warning. Hard hats, pickaxe, shovels, boots required.